And we're going to get right into some breaking news right off the top. Here we go. Oh! Here we go. This is hot news. Hot off the press. I don't think anyone has heard this yet, but here it is. Axios claiming they have sources that Donald Trump plans to announce a class action lawsuit against Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg, Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey, both simultaneously. Ladies and gentlemen, this is starting to sound like a UFC match. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. In this corner, we have the Don Meister weighing in at about 300 pounds. Big
and going up,
and Big Donnie standing off against Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey, and this is going to happen at an 11 a.m. press conference today, which means I don't know which time zone they're referring to, but it's currently 7 a.m. in LA, which means it's 10 a.m. Eastern, which means this could be in 1 hour. A live press conference. Let's see, which time zone are they talking about? Former President Donald Trump, who has complained about censorship by social media giants, plans to announce a class action lawsuit today against Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg, Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey, sources tell Axios. It's the latest escalation in Trump's year-long battle with Twitter and Facebook over free speech and censorship. Trump is completely banned from Twitter and is banned from Facebook for another 2 years. Trump is scheduled to make an announcement at a press conference today at 11 a.m. Come on, Axios, give us a time zone. We don't all live in whatever time zone you think that applies to. Come on.
Hey, Tyler, I don't know if you had an unintentional pun there, but if you read that article, one of the people who is part of this group that's leading this thing with Trump is Linda McMahon, and she's one of the founders of the World the Wrestling Federation.
Oh, no, you can't make that up.
I just had a mental image of this press conference taking place at Four Seasons Total Landscaping, like his good friend Rudy Giuliani did about a year ago.
That was classic. That was the peak. Oh man!
Please have it be the furry one, not the real one.
Trump's legal effort is being supported by America First Policy Institute. And the group's president and CEO and board chair, former Trump officials Linda McMahon. Oh, you're right. That's Jim McMahon's wife. And Brooke Rollins will accompany him during the announcement. Class action lawsuits would enable him to sue the two tech CEOs on behalf of a broader group of people that he argues have been censored by biased policies. To date, Trump and other conservative critics have not presented any substantial evidence that either platform is biased against conservatives in its policies or implementing of them. The big picture. Data shows that Trump's megaphone has been significantly muzzled in light of bans from big tech platforms, particularly Twitter and Facebook. The president and his allies have repeatedly criticized the bans on censorship. The tech giants argue that they were put in place for safety reasons following the Capitol siege in January. Facebook's independent oversight board affirmed Facebook's decision to suspend Trump in May. And Trump has often sued people in the course of his career, but rarely actually followed through in terms of winning a judgment or even taking cases to trial. What to watch for? Lawsuits and actions targeting big tech platforms serve as ammunition for Trump's conservative base. Down-ballot Republican candidates have latched onto messages around censorship as part of their campaigns and messaging tactics. And I guess we are going to find out more. It still doesn't say which time zone that this Trump press conference. Let's do a quick little search for the words Trump press conference, 11 a.m.
Do we know where the lawsuit's happening? Maybe that would be a tell.
Live stream. President-elect Donald Trump. No. Let's look under the news tab. Here's The Blaze. They might know because they're more friendly with him than Axios is. regarding social media at press conference on Wednesday. Are you going to say what time zone, Blaze? Are you going to say it? Are you going to say which time zone? 11 a.m. from the Trump National Golf Course in New Jersey. They didn't say the time zone, but they said the location. That's good enough for me. So in 1 hour from now. So let's set our clocks for 54 minutes. Somebody please remind me. Oh, man. And this, in some sense, is related to the fact that I said, what's going to happen if Donald Trump, he's going to run in the midterm elections, right? After, Joe Biden's got, his 4 years. At the end of that, arguably Trump's going to run again if he's still alive. And he has, as much as some people don't like to think so, that last election was quite close, actually. Closer than most people would have preferred. A little too close for comfort for some people, right? Everyone can agree.
Not by votes, but electoral college speaking. Yeah.
Yeah. It was not a landslide, right?
About the electoral college.
Yeah.
Hillary won the vote. We're talking about the electoral college.
Yeah.
For those.
Yeah. Even take Trump out of it. All of the recent presidential elections have been quite close in recent presidential elections.
Yeah, these are not Reagan days, right?
No.
Reagan had one state, one
sheer
electoral
number of
college
votes.
state.
If you count California, New York votes, but the point is the electoral college is very close.
Mm-hmm.
The popular vote is not as close. The popular vote is Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. That's everyone.
To my point, we've now had multiple cases where the popular vote is the opposite of what the actual outcome is. That tells you how close it is net. That's my point. Is he's going to run again, and he has a chance. That's my point. My point is he actually could win if he runs again.
Any Republican can win again, right? It's a two-party system, and anyone who's nominated has a pretty even odds at winning.
Right. When he ran the first time, people said he didn't have a chance. They're not going to say that the second time, right? So here's my point: is if he runs, which he certainly is going to, and if he wins, which he certainly could, what's going to happen to Facebook and Twitter, knowing how much I've said this at least 10 times. I haven't said it recently, but if those of you who have joined us from the beginning, Cal and Cheryl, and probably Ellen even remembers, I've brought up the point many times. What happens to Twitter and Facebook if Trump wins? What's he going to do? Clearly, he's got a beef. He's not even waiting to win. He's not even waiting another 52 minutes because he's going live with his own WWF event. He's ready to jump from the top rope and body slam Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey and throw them right out of the ring, WWF style. So we're going to see what he's got to say. I want to know who's streaming this press conference, because I suspect this is interesting in the art of PR, because I think left-leaning media is intentionally not going to cover it, just to keep him muzzled, silenced.
I found it.
What'd you find?
Newsmax.
There we go.
So I just tweeted it at you. You'll see the, sorry, there's some kind of weird echo, but you'll see all of the ways to stream it in exactly as you said at 11 Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific.
Okay.
Tina, can you DM me? Thank you.
Okay. Well, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. Donald Trump doing that was breaking news. Indeed, we're going to know in about 50 minutes. Okay. In the meantime, let's run through the big, boring headlines that all of your coworkers.
Tyler, one more thing.
Yes.
There are about 20 Senate seats up at stake. So the balance in the Senate is going to be actually tilting towards the Republicans. So that's another development happening. So Biden's not going to go that far in terms of actually bringing in some new laws or in less than a year and a half. So that's another, tilting thing happening.
I didn't quite get your point. Could you say that again, Karam?
Okay, so it's right now it's 50-50 in the Senate.
You're right.
But
super close, yeah.
Yeah, super close. And now the 20 seats, according to the estimation, the analysis is that roughly close to 20 seats can go to the Republicans.
Right.
So it's hang in the balance. So Biden's own seat is probably going to be going to Republicans for sure. So once the Republicans has got the balance in the Senate, I mean, they can pull a lot of strings. So
right.
That's
I want to. Is Jeff in the audience? Because I want to invite Jeff, because Jeff knows, having worked in DC, that when what we have in America right now is the Democrats have all three houses: the Senate, the House of Representatives, and the White House. And historically, in those situations, the quote unquote, the side that has control of all three houses in the next election generally gives up a considerable number of seats in Congress. That's just historical. Historically, they don't maintain an advantage going into the next election. In fact, they kind of historically lose a lot of seats going into the next election. So we will see.
Tyler, what it really is, it doesn't almost matter what the complexion of the legislature is. It's the party of the president. Whichever party the president is in loses seats in the Congress in the midterms.
Right.
Almost regardless of what the legislature looks
right.
like. Yes. Yes.
But the question is, does Republicans still want Trump?
Today, right now, it appears that way.
Oopsie.
And I'm not sure what could happen to change that.
Well, one of the things people need to take into account who are not from the United States is the House of Representatives, the lower house, people are elected from districts, and those districts more and more are what we use the term in the United States called gerrymandered, so that the districts either favor a Democrat or a Republican overwhelmingly. They're not balanced seats. They're not. Many of the seats in the House of Representatives are no longer competitive, which is one of the reasons that the House Republicans have, quite frankly, they actually picked up seats in the last election, even though Trump lost. So they're very likely in 2 years from now, whatever it is, 2022, very likely to take control of the House, and the Senate, of course, is 50-50. And by the way, many of the Senate seats that are up are in competitive races, because the Senate, because the people are elected from states, typically the Senate races are more competitive. Between Democrats and Republicans.
Right. So I guess Jeff didn't come over from the political newsroom to give. Well, we got the point, though, is that that's generally what happens. So we can carry on from that. Jason, if I remember correctly, did come over from the other room where we were talking. Jason, you had a question, because we were just in the politics media room talking politics right before we got in here, and you had a question, and I forget what the question was regarding.
You were talking about the ClearView AI.
Mm-hmm.
And so you mentioned a gentleman by the name of Charles.
Yes,
that was his company.
Yeah.
I was like that. It tripped me out, because Charles is a good friend of mine, and the ClearView AI was the app that I was beta testing prior to their sale and launch.
Uh-huh.
That was when we were talking in a previous day about the facial recognition software, and I was speaking as to how I would just try it in a different restaurant, and it would pull up so much.
Oh, right. I remember you saying that story. Yeah.
Yeah. Charles is a good friend of mine. I've known him for a number of years, and I helped him beta test that whole app, and that app is just so incredible and such a powerful tool.
I just spoke with Charles about 3 hours ago. And he's very excited about a satellite that they just launched, which he's been very excited about, and he's been updating me almost daily about that. Anywho, yeah, ClearView AI is really interesting, and it's the headline that we were talking about is about the ClearView is an American company, and it's been in the headlines often, usually around how ubiquitously it is being adopted by state agencies of all kinds, most notably police stations. And I would wager that you would have a very difficult time finding a police station that isn't using it. And then somebody did a report recently that said, out of 40 federal agencies that they checked, at least 10 were using it. And then I laughed and I said, yeah, that's the 10 that will admit to it. I guarantee you all of them are using it, but they're just not admitting it. And the other headlines came out kind of backing up my exact point, which is these federal agencies are intentionally designed so that they are not, they are able to kind of conceal, much of what they do. You can imagine how the CIA doesn't go around telling everyone what kind of software they're using. So, nonetheless, there is other similar companies around the world. Very notably, based out of Hong Kong, Shenzhen, is SendTime, the Chinese-based app, which is very much used in a very big way. And my God, is that a tremendous juggernaut of a tech company that's growing very quickly there on the border of Hong Kong. And can do fantastic things. There's been headlines that criminals have been caught just by walking into a soccer stadium of 60,000 fans, and they're able to pick them out of 60,000 Chinese faces in a soccer arena. And then there's the headline today on this front is about the Israeli competitor in this space. Just raised $235 million, something along those lines, and backed by SoftBank. And SoftBank, it knows what they're doing. And so I would, it's as much as some countries are starting to crack down on this, I think it's just going to push it underground, kind of like prohibition and alcohol and all this. The headline from TechCrunch says, controversial Israeli facial recognition startup AnyVision raises $235 million, co-led by SoftBank and Eldridge Industries, and Public Records, and a 2019 version of its user guide showed just how invasive AnyVision's facial recognition software can be. And their customers include schools. What else can we say about this? Charles told me a story one time privately, kind of offline, that AnyVision is one of their biggest competitors because they're competing for Europe and American agencies and customers. And that basically ClearView got a big client, and AnyVision got very jealous that they had lost because it was a very close race for that very big client, and that led the Israeli intelligence industry teams, call them what you will, to start using their other resources against ClearView. Because when you're competing with a country, because here's what happens. And by the way, we have other headlines today that will again back up a point that I've made multiple times, which is that these types of technologies, like facial recognition, are of tremendous interest to the state. So AnyVision as a startup is of keen interest to Israel as a country, as you can imagine, because they have security issues you may have heard about. And so they use AnyVision. The state uses AnyVision. The state is very protective of AnyVision, this facial recognition. And America uses ClearView AI. And so China uses SenseTime. And so when some of these technologies are being used by the state directly, you get some interesting outcomes that can confuse some people. So, in fact, in some instances, as I've hinted at, the state even knows they want this technology before it really exists, and they even suggest, hey, we are a dream client for anyone who would make this technology that we know we need. And if you need any grease in the wheels of making this technology a reality, let's work together, because we are not really capable of doing. We don't really want to be the driving force behind this technology. We need a bunch of geeks separately kind of running it. And it's kind of, as is very well known in China, where the state and these big tech companies play very friendly with each other. So on that point, there's a headline to kind of back up this exact point that Cheryl found just a couple hours ago, which is right here. Chinese, no, that's a different one. Here it is. From Reuters. You've probably heard of Reuters. It's this little blog you might have heard of. Reuters reporting now that China's gene giant harvests data from millions of women. A parental test used worldwide, not just in China, sends DNA data of pregnant women and their babies to the company that developed it with China's military. Oh, okay. I'm sure there's nothing sneaky going on there at all. I'm sure they just, China's military probably has no interest in DNA database. No, probably nothing at all. Oh, and by the way, the subheadline, the U.S. sees a security risk, is the part of the headline I forgot to include. So a Chinese gene company selling prenatal tests around the world developed them in collaboration with China's military and is using them to collect genetic data from millions of women for sweeping research on the traits of populations. Geez, I wonder if they're actually building a DNA database like Orange County is doing in the U.S., by the way. We just had that headline 48 hours ago. A Reuters review of scientific papers and company statements found the U.S. government advisors warned in March that the vast bank of genomic data, that's DNA data, that the company called BGI Group is amassing and analyzing with artificial intelligence. Oh, shit. That's when you know you're in trouble, is when they're using AI to do the analyzing. This is not we're just looking for, one little thing in this data. This means they are sequencing the data, the genomes. So with use of artificial intelligence could give China a path to economic and military advantage. As science pinpoints new links between genes and human traits, access to the biggest, most diverse set of human genomes is a strategic edge. The technology could propel China to dominant global pharmaceuticals and also potentially lead to genetically engineered soldiers or engineered pathogens to target the U.S. population or food supply. Good times, everybody. It's a fun show. Hey, welcome. You thought things were getting a little screwy with social media? You thought, 2021 and 2020 was getting a little kooky town, little crazyville due to little Russian interference and misinformation on Facebook that, kind of politicized people, polarized people during an election year? You think that made shit get a little screwy? Wait till you see what happens with genetic data. Wait till you see what happens when they're engineering pathogens and targeting U.S. population and food supply. You think social...
I got a quick question, yeah.
Go ahead, Samir.
Yeah, the question, I did ask the same question in the other room when Sherry brought up the same headline. My question is to you and anybody in the room. Just this, what the Chinese are doing, and this, genetic warfare wannabe kind of thing going into the future. Does that, obviously, at least for me, and I would think like to think people in the Western world, it violates the core values of beliefs systems here. Does it justify, the Western world to go into that path just to counter what the Chinese are doing, or just because you need to, justify countering that by going into our own super soldier kind of thing, or not?
Okay, well, that's like a fantastic question there, Samir, because in just a couple paragraphs into this article, it brings up a gentleman by the name of Eric Schmidt. And you might, if you're a real geek, you know who Eric Schmidt is. That was Google's CEO for most of Google's career. And now he's the chief exec Google. He's now the United States National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence. So Reuters wrote this article, and let me just highlight a few interesting statements from this Reuters article, where it says, the BGI is the largest kind of prenatal test on the planet. So far, 8 million women have taken BGI's prenatal test globally, and they've not said how many women took the test abroad. Okay. And then regarding Eric Schmidt, the Reuters examination also sheds new light on concerns expressed by U.S. expert panel, the U.S. National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence, led by former Google CEO Eric Schmidt, who may know a thing or two about AI and might know a thing or two about genetic information. After all, Google's co-founder, Sergey Brin's wife, runs 23andMe. So he might know a little bit about DNA testing and AI and the combination of those two things. After all, he leads the United States National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence, so he might have a little idea of what's going on here. And he's warning that he said, I'll find the article, he said it about a month ago, that we as America need to fund this in a very big way, because he has expressed he's very concerned that China is going to use this in a militarized fashion. That's Eric Schmidt's statement, published statement. And so it says, the panel said in March that the United States should recognize China's strides towards global leadership in biotechnology and AI as a new kind of national security threat, and boost funding for its own research to counter China's state-driven effort. Precisely. So this Reuters article just obviously read the same article I did about 6 weeks ago, where Eric did say exactly that we need to boost up or we're going to fall behind China. So China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said the reporting in this article reflected groundless accusations and smears. And China has released new privacy and data security laws that offer great protection of personal data, but also allow Chinese national security authorities to access the data. Well, isn't that convenient? So, here, my point is, guess who else would love to build a national, I've said this before, I'm saying it again, guess who else would love to build a global genetic database? The U.S. would love to do that. But the U.S. government is not really in a position to do that. So, as I told you, I know somebody who was, and Dave knows as well. I don't know if Dave's with us on stage. Dave, are you here? Dave's not with us. Dave confirmed, the same individual that I know that was approached. That is an entrepreneur with connections to the federal government who says he was approached by the federal government to build this database. And the way that it was to be done was to cooperate with other countries at their ports of entry to do screenings as people enter the country, doing nasal swab tests for ostensibly COVID, and potentially use that DNA to build up a DNA database that could then be shared with the local government country at the port of entry, but also keep it for the international database that would be overseen by the U.S. China's, I think it's, you can go ahead and think to yourself which countries might be already active in these efforts.
I think it's not just China.
It is either. So when we say we think China might be doing it, I don't think it's, I'm with you, Cheryl. I don't think it's only China that's doing this. So I'm not picking on China in saying this. Matter of fact, I think, I have a friend who told me that the U.S. wants to do it. So it's going to be very interesting. Anyway, but it does highlight, again, the fact that states have problems that they need solutions to, that they themselves are not capable of necessarily building, but funding. And in fact, Elon Musk, you could argue, falls into that camp. That in perhaps Starlink was not his idea. Maybe it was the state's idea. but he was the one that was able to manifest it, and maybe he's getting subsidized and lots of support to do it. And maybe that's why he's winning NASA contracts that are causing Jeff Bezos to cry, woo, 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 this is not fair. Why does Elon keep winning these NASA contracts? Why do you think, Jeff? You know why, Jeff. You're not stupid. So let's get into some of these other headlines. Kieran just found a related article from today, right now. Wall Street Journal, big headline: the future of everything, artificial intelligence. Faces are the next target for fraudsters, is the headline. Wow, here we go. What a beautiful connect dot puzzle piece snapping together here. And go ahead and look at the article. I just tweeted it. Thank you, Kieran, for this one. Hackers are pioneering new ways of tricking facial recognition systems, from cutting the eyes out of photos to making a portrait nod with artificial intelligence. This is a really weird looking article. You have to see it to understand what I'm saying. This is not your ordinary Wall Street Journal article. It says the future of everything covers the innovation and technology transformation, transforming the way we live, work, and play, with monthly issues on health, money, cities, and more. And facial recognition systems, long touted as a quick and dependable way to identify everyone from employees to hotel guests, are in the crosshairs of fraudsters. For years, researchers have warned about the technology's vulnerabilities, but recent schemes have confirmed their fears and underscore the difficult but necessary task of improving the systems. In the past year, thousands of people in the U.S. have tried to trick facial identification verification to fraudulently claim unemployment benefits from state workforce agencies, according to identity verification firm ID.me. The company, which uses facial recognition software to help verify individuals on behalf of 26 U.S. states, says that between June 2020 and January 2021, it found more than 80,000 attempts to fool the selfie step in government ID matchups among the agencies it worked with. That included people wearing special masks, using deepfakes, lifelike images generated by AI, or holding up an image or video of other people, says ID.me Chief Executive Blake Hall. Facial recognition for one-to-one identification has become one of the most widely used applications of artificial intelligence, allowing people to make payments via their phones, walk through passport check-in systems, or verifying themselves as workers. Drivers for Uber, for instance, must regularly prove they are licensed account holders by taking selfies on their phones and uploading them to the company, because what was happening was somebody got approved as an Uber driver, and then their other friend, who doesn't even have a driving license, isn't approved as an Uber driver, wants to make money. Oh, sure, just use my phone because my account as an Uber driver is tied to my phone. Go ahead and drive yourself crazy. And then some of the passengers were saying, hey, you know what? The photo and name of the driver that you said was going to pick me up looks quite a bit different than the lady who picked me up. The young lady who picked me up looks very different from the 80-year-old man that you said was going to pick me up. Right? So then Uber realized, okay, we see what's happening is drivers are sharing their phones with their friends so that they can monetize when they're not even legal to drive, for example. So now Uber fixed that by using facial recognition. So the driver has to take a selfie at the start of each shift. Pretty clever. And in the middle of the shift, because clearly they could have sat in the car and then let their friend drive. So anyway, Amazon and smaller vendors, like IDEMIA and AnyVision, sell facial recognition systems for identification. The technology works by mapping a face to create so-called face print, which was precisely the words that TikTok used when they updated their terms of service about 3 weeks ago to say we now require, as part of our privacy policy, the ability to take a face print and a voice print of you as a user. Identifying single individuals is typically more accurate than spotting faces in a crowd. Yeah, but they can spot faces in crowds, which we have headlines to prove. So thank you for that, Kieran. Indeed, it's becoming a really, really, really interesting space. And that's a really, really interesting article. And thank you to
a lot of the usage is really not at the state or the federal level. It's individuals who are using this technology.
Sure.
And that gets kind of scary. So even individual cops just on their phones.
Correct.
So how do you regulate that when it's an app that's generally available to download?
You can't.
And if I can chime in,
yeah.
I was listening about 6 months ago, my favorite, the daily podcast from the New York Times, how facial identification is being used by the police, but that it really is not a good one identifying colored people. So they had an example and interviewing a black man being accused of killing someone, and then they couldn't even get him off it. It took a while. And then they finally just apologized, and they said that they used the facial identification, and they didn't even confirm it with the other way of trying to identify a person's identity. So it could be really very dangerous if that's the only means the police is using it widely in some areas in the U.S. So to me, it's really early, and I think the algorithms probably are also really biased into some different facials or colors and things like that. So yeah, that's one of the things I was scared about, being a colored person.
Yep. I got a bunch of headlines, and then we'll see who wants to share something. Here we go. Jumping right in, Frans just sent one in that Huawei, a Chinese 5G company, takes their patent fight with Verizon to a Texas courtroom. Good luck with that one, Huawei. Huawei says it was treated unfairly when the U.S. government labeled it a security threat. Okay. Well, let's see what a Texas judge is going to say about that.
I think I know how it's going to go down in Texas. It's going to pretty much just go, are you guys doing this? Yes or no?
What in God's name ever happened to the CFO?
Oh, the lady who went to Canada, you mean?
Yeah, where is she and what's going on with her, that poor woman?
I don't know.
She's still in Canada? Has she been shipped off?
Isn't she home arrest in Canada?
Somebody can dig that up while we keep doing some of these headlines.
Okay.
Frans sent in another one that the UK deploys fastest supercomputer to fight dementia. Nvidia boots up UK supercomputer to boost drug research, and has built a UK supercomputer for scientists and drug makers that will allow researchers to model diseases and discover new medicines. And maybe our friend from Nvidia might be in the audience, as she often is. She was here in our last session about 7 hours ago, but I don't see her right now. So if anyone, what's her name? Megdu? If someone sees her, let's get her input on that. But that's a really interesting article. Indeed, supercomputers and AIs are indeed being used to create new drugs. Indeed, and wait until AlphaFold starts rolling at full steam. It's going to be mind blowing. Apple Music's new spatial audio feature is rad when it's done right, is the headline from Mashable. Spatial audio doesn't make every song better, but when it works very well, and it's actually more meant for TV and content, and particularly VR. Why VR? Because as part of VR, you're going to have something in your ears, either your AirPods or your the big, huge one that Apple came out with, the AirPod Max, or what do they call that thing? Air Max Pro. And the reason is because when you're in VR and you're walking around, or AR rather, you need to be able to sense where the sound is coming from in a very realistic 360 degrees, totally spherical way, if it's happening above or below or left or right or forward or back of you. And that's really why they're being forced to roll out this technology now, to have it ready, because in September, they're going to come out with their AR, VR mixed reality headset. And that's going to need to be compatible and have spatial audio as part of it. Spatial audio is critical, as JT can fill us all in on how just as when you spin your head around in VR in 360 degrees and everything seems to cooperate logically, the audio needs to match that. And that's what spatial audio is really all about. It's not really meant for your Bob Marley songs or,
And they're working on directional haptics with spatial audio, so you know where your content is coming from, and it points you to the direction of that content as well.
Yeah. But it's a super cool technology. But even this Mashable article implies that the journalist isn't even really aware as to why Apple's doing it. So, what's this one about? Oh, an online education firm called Upgrad just raised $250 million, and you're going to see a lot of that. I'm just telling you now. We'll just blaze through them when we find them. But ed tech startups now are raising big rounds like that $250 million round that we just announced. Almost every day, you're going to get insurance tech is happening big. We had a headline earlier today about an insurance tech company just raised a bunch of money. Med tech companies are going to be raising big rounds.
There,
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. What would be really important there is to keep an eye on who's sitting on the cap tables. Especially in ed tech, because that is going to tell us who's going to manipulate the world of education in the future.
Previously, it's been Tencent. And the last three that we read around big...
There you go.
Right. The last three big ed tech fundings that we read all amazingly had Tencent as investors. So if this one called Upgrad does as well, then we need to start being a little concerned about Tencent monopolizing the future of ed tech. Because they are a big data company, just like Google is, actually. So I'm trying to see where in this article that it lists the backers of it.
It's usually either SoftBank or Tencent.
True. That's true. You're right about that.
Tyler, I only have 3 minutes before my next meeting. The world's shortest update. The thing is that Coop, our friends that had a malware infestation, they just press release that they will have all the shops online by tomorrow through a breakthrough. Okay, my first thought here was, have they paid? And it seems like they might have done that. I'm still looking for more information. If they have done so, I will get very, very angry and disappointed with them. You are done.
Well, they were asking for an incredible amount of money, were they not, in that case?
Yeah, but that was for the whole lot. It might be that Coop themselves and the pharmacy chains as well, because they are all interconnected through the same systems. It might be that they have come and said, okay, but we're not interested in solving it for the rest of the ones, but we need for us. How much would be for us? Might be that they have done something like that. That's the indication I have right now. I will update you when I get hold of you again. You are done.
Thank you, Johan. Okay, so a couple more juicy headlines. Dr. Fran had just sent one in about YouTube's Recommender AI, still a horror show. I'm tweeting this out right now. And by the way, if you are new to Tech News Around the World, welcome. And by the way, I have very happy Wednesday to everybody. And if you look on my photo, you will see our Twitter account, TNATW, which are the first letters of Tech News Around the World, where we tweet out every headline we discuss in real time. So you can read the whole headline and retweet it and share it and save it and discuss it with your friends. And
Tyler, Upgrad, the ed tech firm, it's backed by Temasek.
Okay. So this one about YouTube that Dr. Fran sent in, and when I say Dr. Fran sent in, if you look at our Twitter account, you'll see what I mean. She tweeted it, included our Twitter account as part of her tweet, and then I just retweeted her tweet. So it's now been officially retweeted to the interwebs for your tweet-consuming enjoyment. And YouTube's Recommender AI, still a horror show, finds major crowdsourced study. For years, YouTube's video recommending algorithm has stood accused of fueling a grab bag of society ills by feeding users an AI-amplified diet of hate speech, political extremism, and or conspiracy junk disinformation for the profiteering motive of trying to keep billions of eyeballs stuck to its ad inventory. And there is an argument there, which is, as a platform, YouTube, I know because I worked very closely and intimately with YouTube for many years, that they started out as cat videos. And then they realized they wanted to compete with TV. And that was an incredibly conscious decision long before anybody else knew it. They revealed it to me, and I might have been one of the very first non-YouTube employees that they revealed that vision to, that their actual vision for YouTube is to compete with TV. And to do that, they were going to make it really easy to link videos back to back to back to back to back and just autoplay videos and, get you consuming in hour-long chunks. And they're not interested in you watching a 2-minute video and leaving. So indeed, they're going to recommend whatever video they think you're likely to watch next, whether or not kind of consequences be damned. Like, they just want to make sure you click and stay watching. So they have their priorities is, keeping you on the site. Average viewer time is the metric. And so indeed, that might mean sending you to videos that amplify extreme political views or conspiracy theories or kind of junk disinformation. And so there is some merit to this criticism here in this first paragraph. And while YouTube's tech giant parent Google has sporadically responded to negative publicity around the algorithm's antisocial recommendations, announcing a few policy tweaks or limiting the odd hateful content, it's now clear how far the platform's penchant for promoting horribly unhealthy clickbait has actually been rebooted. The suspicion remains nowhere near far enough. New research published today by Mozilla backs up the notion, suggesting YouTube's AI continues to puff up piles of bottom-feeding, low-grade, divisive, disinforming content, stuff that tries to grab eyeballs by tricking people's sense of outrage, sowing division, polarization, and spreading baseless, harmful information, which in turn implies that YouTube's problem with recommending terrible stuff is indeed systemic, a side effect of the platform's rapacious appetite to harvest views and serve ads. YouTube's AI is still, per the study, behaving so badly also suggests Google has pretty successful at fusing criticism with superficial claims of reform, but regulation that could help crack open proprietary AI black boxes is now on the cards, at least in Europe. Oh, that's stupid. Good luck with that. That is never going to happen. Chris, tell them how stupid they are.
You're really stupid.
That's so stupid. You're not going to get Google to open its AI algorithmic boxes. To even think that's going to happen, that's worse than asking Mark Zuckerberg how to log back into your account when you forgot your password. That's how stupid that is. That's never, ever, 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 never going to happen. They will leave the country before they agree to let you open their algorithms. That is their secret. Hey, Coca-Cola, if you want to do business here, it's real simple. You just got to tell us your recipe that you've kept secret, since time began, in some kind of vault that only the founders' grandchildren know.
That the two people on the planet that had the recipe can't even be
in the same room in the same time. Right. Yeah, that recipe. Yeah, we need that. We need you to open that so we can see how you're recommending things, because we don't like how you're recommending things. So we need to see how you're recommending things. That's so stupid. What a misguided, stupid idea. So,
just a question here. I wanted to ask a question here.
Yeah.
When we are talking about algorithms and the propensity of algorithms to not actually be made public, so the question is that, will there ever be a transparency in the AI framework at all? Because the AI leads to creation of algorithms, right? So is it likely to ever happen, or it will always be close-guarded and will never be out of the box?
We don't know. But what we do know is here's an interesting thought experiment. These recommendation algorithms, in the case of Spotify, right? Spotify is also trying to send you the next song that you're most likely to continue listening to in a very similar way as YouTube is doing with videos, right? But in Spotify's case, it's not really a big concern. They're not sending you to content, odd songs that you're going to find really objectionable to, although they are going into podcasts in a very, very big way. And what if after 10 songs they think, you know what? our algorithm tells us you're probably in the mood for a podcast, and here's a podcast, and that podcast might be very enlightening, or it could be conspiracy theory junk food, couldn't it? And then it turns more into a content thing, and that's interesting. And what about our friends here at our very beloved Clubhouse, where they've got a hallway full of rooms, and they're looking at the data as to how, when somebody clicks on a room, how long they stay in the room. That's called average viewer time. And I and Cal and other people know the average viewer times of every room in Clubhouse. In fact, that's my hobby. I've been doing this for months. And I can see which rooms Clubhouse is pushing people into, because they have very low average viewer times, but very high people going into the rooms, which means the algorithm is preferring them, promoting them, giving them increased visibility. And it's very interesting to watch. And the rooms can change from time to time, because sometimes a room gets downgraded and gets lower visibility than they've had very incredibly consistently for the last 2 months. All of a sudden, magically, the next day, they have lower visibility. And it's very tiered. It's very, it's very obvious which level of visibility each room has been boosted, either slight visibility increase, moderate visibility increase, or extreme visibility increase. And you can also have visibility decrease, mild visibility decrease, stronger visibility decrease, and complete visibility decrease, which means the room isn't findable unless your friend invites you into it. It's kind of a shadow banning of the room. And you have those 6 steps, and you can, if you watch the data of the rooms in real time, you can see which of those 6 levels each room has by just watching the real-time data of the average listener times. So, of the number of people going in and out of the rooms and the average listener time, you need both those. But anyway, the point of the recommendation and the algorithms is, imagine a Clubhouse or an app like Clubhouse, Twitter Spaces, whatever. They get to a point where they've got 10,000 or, heaven forbid, 50,000 rooms happening all the time, 24 hours. Which rooms will they recommend to you? And in the same way that YouTubers get into rabbit holes of conspiracy theories, and that keeps them in the app for a very long time, perhaps an audio app of a social audio app would essentially do the same. They have the same interest of keeping you in rooms for as long as possible. And why wouldn't they recommend you to a room where where they feel that you're very likely to stay in there, even if that room is conspiracy theories or whatnot?
Hey, Tyler.
Yes.
Can I just mention on YouTube, on the flip side of something, that they a lot of people don't know this. They are like the single biggest provider of traditional television, like NBC, ABC, for people who want to get rid of their cable box or satellite. They have more subscribers than Sling and Hulu and Hulu Live and all of that. They've got more subscribers to their television service that basically is just another way of watching linear television, and that's how they keep people in the app also. And that's not, that has nothing to do with showing you bad ads. That's basically you watching the same thing you'd watch on your regular television.
Yeah, things like algorithm recommendation content, essentially accidentally, that in later it's like, oops, this actually violates our policies. We shouldn't have actually suggested that to people. And so it's a really long article, actually. My God, that's a long article. Holy Jesus, that's a long article for TechCrunch. That's like 5 times longer than your average TechCrunch article. So I'm sharing that at the Twitter account, TNATW, which you can see on my photo here in Clubhouse. And you can go, if you want to read all about YouTube's algorithms and why they are sending you to conspiracy theory videos, which I can tell you why. It keeps people on the site for a very long time, and it keeps them clicking into other related videos. So anyways, but I think it's worth considering how that same dynamic can play out in social audio land on whatever platform people end up using in social audio. That if there is a hallway that is algorithmically generated, which it is, and we might see, as much as people get their views siloed. We see this all the time, and people were blaming social media apps like Facebook that you have siloed content, where you have Republicans only watching Republican content, and you get extremism, you get far left and far right, and they're only associating with people and views that confirm their own worldviews, and kind of cause sorts of extremism into those views of kind of anti-vaxxers and all this kind of stuff. Well, why wouldn't that happen in social audio as well? Why wouldn't people go into rooms? Anti-vaxxers are going to find themselves, and that's potentially even more dopamine inducing than a YouTube video about anti-vaxxer stuff. So it's going to get very interesting, is my point.
So that's the value. That's the value of your tech news around the world, because we have views from all around the world.
Well, that's why I encourage people on stage that I don't agree with. And I that's why historically we used to have big heated fights here all the time, because we would intentionally structure the format to be like, oh, who has a strong take on this issue? Okay, who has the opposite take? Okay, you guys argue it out. Let's hear both sides. We used to do that, and it used to get very heated. And
let's get ready to rumble.
That's why we have the "Let's Get Ready to Rumble" sound file was ready on the steady, because we used to have
those days.
Yeah, we used to have a whole lot of rumbling. The problem is, going back to my previous point, we were shadow banned by Clubhouse because of it. And as soon as we stopped that format, then we removed the shadow ban, and that's why we got a lot more visibility. But they were intentionally hiding the room as a result of that.
What's interesting is that this format, this format with the moderator role is, if it's well moderated, is made for that, right? So you can get different points of view, and you can have certain values and politeness, etc. But generally speaking, you can get the points of view out, you can get the arguments out, and you have a moderator role, unlike a random fight on Twitter, right? Between a whole bunch of people, and then you just have everybody blocking each other, etc. So it can actually be done well here, and so this format is made for it. And I think over time, Clubhouse will have to appreciate that and let that be the main, as it opens up to the vast majority and the public generally. I think there are broadly, let's just take on the political front. I think there are, in the US political front, I think there are broadly, just my rough assessment, both sides on this platform, but probably 30-70, right? 70% would vote for Biden, just as an example, and 30% would vote for Trump. So that, if that gets to 50-50, which is what the country is roughly marginally, it has, the moderation becomes key, right? And so it has got an advantage, and other places don't, because you can have that discourse. But it's going to take some courage from the founders and to allow true diversity, and the head of programming, etc., to be to go to rooms that are truly about discourse, and watch them and enjoy them and show other people they enjoy them, etc., etc. But it's gonna, it's a really well made point there, Tyler. I think this platform is going to have all the same challenges.
Yeah, it's a similar, because it's going to be passive discovery is the name of the game. There's two ways that people look for content: passive discovery and active discovery. And when you're just,
can we have nice fights? Like nice fights, like
nice fights,
nice fights,
pillow fights,
like nice.
Like, so Tyler,
yeah, there he goes. There he goes.
This was the guy who started it all right here, Kieran.
Bring it on. Bring it on.
Hot mic.
Just Tyler, just to highlight some of the points, right? Look, I mean, all this algorithm and what Clubhouse is trying to do. So I think there's a couple of headlines I shared with you. So basically, apparently, YouTube algorithm is pointing kids and teenagers into sexual content, videos, because they're seeing there's a massive fall in terms of viewership, and the algorithm is being manipulated so that it's directing. That's the first thing, right? Second thing is, we've been talking a lot about India in terms of, so India's headline today is that what the government asking Twitter is that Twitter should hold accountable for the users' content on their site, right?
And I don't know if you remember last week, the Facebook is testing something. So now, after all of this damage that Facebook has done, Facebook is testing a prompt that's asking users if they're worried about a friend is becoming an extreme, right?
Right.
Just think about that. It's like giving Kieran the freedom, a dopamine and a chocolate, and asking my wife, "Oh, is Kieran is becoming a chocoholic?" What the fuck is going on in this world, Tyler? It's
well,
like so. I think
they also have another warning where if they've noticed that you've been consuming extremist content, they send you a message saying, "Hey, Kieran, we noticed that you've been consuming potentially content that is causing people to become an extremist, and is everything okay?"
So exactly. So there you go. There you go. So I think So you have these algorithms where they can manipulate you to send you to certain sites, and then they can turn around. I think this is where I think Clubhouse needs to draw the line. This discourse, having this kind of the fight. I think it's important. That's where you come in. As long as you, at the end of it, you shake your hands and you respect each other's viewpoint and walk away. I think that's something. I think it's very
Yes,
important. I think
but the point I want to make is that you're likely to do in social audio just as you did in video consumption, which is you're going to seek out rooms that amplify your own views. And you're going to go into when there's 50,000 rooms and you can talk about literally anything on the planet at any time. You're not likely to go into rooms of people who disagree with you. You're going to be more prone. And by the way, because the algorithms are going to know which you're more likely to stay in more longer, and they're going to recommend those rooms to you primarily. And I would wager that they're going to recommend rooms to you that you're going to stay in longer, and that's going to turn out to be the rooms where people agree with your views generally.
Tyler, on this topic, can I make one last point? Just one last point.
Yeah.
You see, I think since I joined Clubhouse, I think originally I wouldn't classify them as fights. We used to have even when me and Kieran used to go at it, our debates were we used to yell and shout, but that's as far as it would go.
Right.
We wouldn't use profanity.
Right.
So I think some of the last episodes is what led to the shadow banning. Right?
Yes.
So would it be okay to maybe still have those respective debates and maybe shout at each other like me and Kieran? Maybe,
okay,
or
so we could.
Do you completely want to go against those debates?
No, we could do that very easily by this right now. 3 minutes ago, did Trump's live stream just go live? By the way,
No, I'm watching it, Tyler. I've got Newsmax on. He's not live yet, but people are lined up for the press conference, so they're waiting. I'll let you know.
Okay.
Hey, Tyler, could you give a quick summary of how shadow banning works and how sophisticated it is?
It's super simple. I've seen it dozens of times, and I used to. That was my hobby, was to find rooms that had titles that were likely to create the kinds of rooms that would get shadow banned, and then just sit and watch what happens. And I would watch the data in real time. It's like a stock chart. I can see how many people are in the room, like a stock chart, and I could watch it go up. I could watch it go down. When somebody with a lot of followers jumps on stage, it goes up because their friends get notified to come in. And when that person leaves the room, it goes down. And then there's multiple different variables that influence the uptick and downtick of the traffic in a room. And when somebody creates a room with a clickbait headline room title, just like clickbait blog posts or clickbait YouTube videos, people make clickbait room titles. And right now, I can guarantee you there's at least a few in the top 20 rooms right now. The top rooms in order in all of Clubhouse at this very moment are 10 Habits of a Self-Made Millionaires. Okay, number 2, Morning Tea, Hot Topics, Tech News Around the World, The Investor Studio by Wealthfront, Breakfast with Champions, and then let me see if there's one that's like a real...
Trump's going live if you're interested.
Okay, just so I can keep us updated on if we need to cut live to it. Okay. Here's one right here. What's a conspiracy theory that you 100% believe in? Well, that's a room about conspiracy theories. People, have you ever dated a narcissist? That one's not so bad. It's more the ones that get racial and relating to genders. Like those kinds of rooms are clearly trying to push some buttons. And I saw one earlier today. I'm not seeing one at the moment because I think the app has done over the course of several months done a job of teaching people those rooms aren't.
If you remember, I did one.
Yes, you did.
I did one that got shadow banned. Remember?
Yes.
There was the one with shit next to Clubhouse.
And this is a great example. Let's use your example. So Faraz made a room that said Clubhouse is poop, something like that. CH is poop emoji, something like that, right? Faraz?
Yeah. So it was basically the poop symbol, and then on Clubhouse, which was implying what's the crap on Clubhouse,
right?
Not implying that Clubhouse is crap,
right?
But I was trying to imply what are the crap rooms on Clubhouse, and stay away from the crap.
Okay.
That was the implication. They took it another way.
Right. So but by the way, that's a clickbaity room, and people joined the room. And I'm trying to remember what size audience you had in that room, but I jumped in there, and there was already, by the time I jumped in there, one of the Clubhouse team members was in there talking with you already about it. And I had come in there to warn you, like, hey, you're going to get shadow banned, because I've been watching this phenomena for a few weeks now, and this is exactly the type of room that's going to get shadow banned, by the way. Even though there was quite a number of people in there at the moment, I knew as soon as a Clubhouse team member got in there, listened for a bit, and
it went up to 200 something,
right.
And as soon as she left, it sank to like 10.
Right. That's my point, is because as soon as a Clubhouse team member audits it and then adjusts your visibility, they're going to adjust your visibility down. They might even, to answer your question, John, there's different degrees of shadow banning, and as I refer to it as degrees of visibility. They can increase or decrease your visibility.
But the thing is, Tyler,
yes.
it's quite common across the other platforms. Like, for example, I remember, my Instagram, I had about 40,000 followers, and in Sri Lanka, there was Tamils are very passionate about this genocide. So I always use this hashtag whenever there's a 1 year anniversary.
Yeah.
And right after I use that hashtag, Sri Lanka need to really reconcile, even though the message is very positive, but when you put a hashtag genocide, next 6 months, I get, it will go from 10,000 views on videos to like 500 views.
Right.
Just literally use the wrong hashtag on Instagram with the 40,000 followers. So I think it's very, it's across the platform.
Yeah. But anyway, the platform has done a job of downgrading or decreasing the visibility of rooms that are clearly trying to make heated, clickbaity rooms. And now there's starting to be less of them, for sure, because people are learning, wow, when I do those rooms, I don't get a lot of followers. Faraz, by the way, the next day, and I suggested you do this, I said, make a room that says Clubhouse is fantastic. What do you love about Clubhouse? And the next day I came in, and that was the largest room you ever did, no? It was clearly being boosted and supported. You clearly had somebody had upgraded your visibility.
Yep. We did it as an experiment, and it went up significantly.
So
Tyler,
who needs?
just to clarify to John's thing, that there are two things, right? That there's the traffic that like this for anything else, but the traffic that Clubhouse drives, which is what they can control, right? And they can control it within a room, so within a time span of a room. We've seen that with a number of the Chinese rooms and other rooms. So within a time. So, but Tyler and I separately were looking at this stuff. It's kind of interesting, in different places, and so they could do that within the room, right? So, like, say this room at this point, if somehow they didn't like the topic, they could slow down the traffic of people that would see it. But that's about all they can control in that sense. They can't control what we talk about, obviously, because that's content. So what happens is the other driver to things is that you can get a room that grows and then just drops. And that happens when you see a lot of Clubhouse celebrities that join rooms purposefully. There may be a content creator promotion, some content creator that they've decided to make sure that they get traffic. So they'll jump on the room, they'll drop. They'll sit on the room underneath for a while. But that is very important for people, all of you guys creating content. That's one factor, but you do have one control, your content. Right. So regardless of how much, I don't know the numbers precisely that Tyler was looking in terms of shadow banning, in terms of how much less traffic they may have driven to tech news during those periods specifically. But because the content was compelling to the people that came here, they stayed, and the room numbers were on average way higher, right, than some of the competing rooms in a sense. So again, the number one factor is the content.
Long term, yes.
Long term, yeah. How well orchestrated it is, because the people will still come there. There'll be less people coming there, but they'll stay, right? So you get the longer listening time. So so the one thing at the end of the day is, and we do this with the people that run the the other rooms when they're new to it or something. We sometimes share the experience. And one piece of that experience is, concentrate on the content. Don't try and outguess the algorithm too much, right? Just concentrate on really good content, good community, and have fun with it. So that's the key thing, though.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler, I'm wondering because I really do like to believe that the founders of Clubhouse created this medium and forum with the best of intentions.
Oh, for sure. I don't doubt that for 1 second.
Do you think it's possible that anybody representing the founders or leadership team would be inclined to have a discussion about the principles behind this phenomena in this session?
I doubt it, and I say that because, and I don't blame their decision, honestly, because I just happened to see something in Green Room that was kind of the opposite. And so factor this in for a second. I pop over to Green Room. There's a room over there called Where Are the Black People At? That's the name of the room. I go over there about every other day. And there's a guy in there, Clarence, and the host, her name's Miss Vinny something. Lovely people. And they created a room, and they wanted to highlight the fact that, well, where are the black people at? Okay. So I jumped in the room because I was like, sounds like my kind of room. And just got to chatting with them, and they know tech news around the world, actually. So they were actually kind of fans of tech news around the world. They've come in multiple times, and they were like, oh, we're from Clubhouse originally, and we used to hang out in your room, and we're over here, and we're just wondering where the black people are at, and blah, blah, blah. And then they've been doing it around the clock, 24 hours a day for quite a while, many days, like weeks. And then the host of the room got a pop-up on their screen, a direct message, essentially, which they didn't even know this. You can't direct message in that app, but they got a direct message from an admin that says, your room has been moved out of the music discovery group into the general audience group, which is kind of a downgrade because nobody follows the general group. That means you're getting much less visibility because you were moved from one group to another. It's like being moved from a club with lots of followers to a club with no followers. It's essentially that. And so they got moved from the music discovery group or club, which has lots of followers, to the general group or club, which has no followers, which is a downgrade, a visibility downgrade. And by the way, we've now limited the number of people you can have on stage at any one time to 12 instead of whatever the norm. There didn't appear to be a limit previously. And they got very upset. They're like, oh, and it included a threat. It says, if you do it again, you will be banned. If you move your room back to the music discovery group, your account will be banned. And so when I had this conversation with them, which was only 24 hours ago, about precisely this, I was like, well, Clubhouse would never do that. They would never DM a room mod or creator and tell them, hey, we just downgraded you, and if you do this bad thing again, you'll be banned. Like that. Clubhouse has never actually told anybody when their account has been decreased or increased visibility. It's all done in the same way that Twitter boosts your visibility or decreases your visibility, or the way Facebook does with your posts, or the way Instagram does with your posts. It's all done behind the scenes secretly without any explicit explanation from the app. Right? So,
but I think that's rather nice that they at least let you know what happened and why. Were they talking about music at any point?
Right. Well, that was their point, where they're like, this is totally bullshit because they're moved us away from the music discovery thing, and we're playing people's songs here all the time. Like, that's why we put ourselves in that group. But when we saw them come by, like 4 hours before we got this DM, somebody came in the room, and that clearly wasn't from our community, and they had, Spotify in the title of their bio or whatever. So 4 hours later, this change happened, and at the time they came in, we didn't happen to be playing music, so we think they made a judgment based on that. I said, well, maybe they did, who knows? But anyway, you're right. We can argue both sides of that. Should the moderators play an active role and debate with you in your room? Hey, you know what? I'm going to boost your room right now. Well done. Or, hey, you know what? I don't like how this conversation is going. I'm going to downgrade your room. It's a bit strong. So, perhaps the app should do what it's going to do and then let people learn in a slower, more organic way. Hey, when I make rooms like this, I get more audience, or when I make rooms like that, I don't. And I think that's the approach they're taking. And it does cause people to guess the algorithm endlessly, as it does on YouTube, where YouTubers now, if you go on YouTube and you search for the word van life, which we've been talking about a lot lately, how, vans are becoming solar powered and now you have Starlink and people can live in their vans and work in their vans. If you go look for the word van life on YouTube, you will notice every video, all 10 videos that you see all say the same thing. Why I'm quitting van life. Van life sucks. I'll do it right now and I'll read you the 10 right now. I'm going to youtube.com. I'm there. Boom, I'm already there. I'm doing a search for van life and I'm going to read you the top 10 videos. Here they are. 10 reason van life sucks. Why I quit van life. The reality of van life. Van life UK week adjusting to van life. The van conversions. 5 mistakes everyone makes about van life. I have a problem with van life. Oregon Coast, Australia van life essentials. Hardest part about van life. Are you seeing a theme here? Why is it?
Negative things.
Yeah, incredibly negative. Now, are the content creators telling that to each other? Are they watching each other and being like, oh, that video just got really popular, I'll copy that video? Or is YouTube knows that the viewers are more interested in the videos where people are explaining the negatives of van life, and so they know that videos that are negative about van life get more clicks and more people watch the video from beginning to end. It's hard to say which is feeding which. It's kind of a chicken and an egg, but that's my point. We're now in a position where, because YouTube isn't telling people why they're doing, how their algorithm works, it's forcing the content creators to guess, just like Clubhouse, just like Instagram, just like Twitter. In Green Room, it's the only example I know of where the mod came in and said, hey, we moved you, we downgraded you essentially based on some decision we made. And if you try to go back, we'll ban you. It's unique. Hey, give it a shot. Let's see how that works.
So is this the digital version of Soma in Aldous Huxley's Brave New World?
Could be. I'm very familiar with the drug. His impression of the dopamine, drug. Yeah, it's a lot. People get a lot of dopamine out of it. I mean, that's a stretch to. I think metaphorically he was talking about an actual pharmaceutical, but anyway, I got some real Soma for you, which are the headlines. That's the real drug here at Tech News Around the World. And somebody sent in a really amazing map of the UK, how it's now being overtaken by the Delta variant. And it's kind of the before and after of what it says are these shocking maps reveal how rapidly the Delta variant has become in a matter of weeks and are a forewarning of dangerous future strains. And so I just got to untweet that so I can retweet it so it will be up.
Donald Trump is live.
Yes. And thanks to Simon from Otter, I'm reading the transcription in real time. And if he says something that we think is interesting, I think best we circle back and highlight all of his most interesting quotes. Marcus Landstrom from, no doubt, Sweden, that's a very Swedish name, sent in an article about that I'm just tweeting out now and everyone can see. And the headline is from Wired UK, one of my absolute favorite publications, that the headline is, "This is Europe's plan to crush China's battery power." With a gigafactory under construction and a new R&D deals, Northvolt could help Europe gain an edge and create the battery of the future. And it's about my friends, Peter, his company, Northvolt. And the headline is, "This is Europe's plan to crush China's battery power," that's clickbait. That is pure clickbait headline. And if Peter knew you were going to use that headline, he wouldn't want that, honestly. So, Wired is just doing tech journalism and putting a very clickbaity headline, but the article itself does go into Northvolt, the whole, as it says right from the top. You can tell a lot about a company's expected prospects by the kind of investors it attracts. Take Northvolt, the Swedish startup, which makes environmentally friendly batteries for use in electric cars, just raised $2.8 billion earlier this month to expand its under-construction gigafactory in Skellefteå in the north of the country. Among its backers was not only one, but 4 Swedish pension funds, which collectively put in $400 million into the business, and blah, 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 blah. And the whole entire article, which is quite long, is all about Northvolt and how Europe had the demand for their cars to go electric, but they didn't have the technology that enabled to meet the demand, which is true, which is why Northvolt was the perfect solution at the right place at the right time, the right team at the right place at the right time to do it. And it's a great story. And I will bring Peter in from Northvolt when I have a more strategic reason to do so. And this headline is truly fantastic. From Sarah, the buy now, pay later is a huge thing going on internationally. And if you follow us every day here at Tech News, you know that. Buy now, pay later, also pioneered in Stockholm, also by a friend of mine, Sebastian at Klarna, along with his co-founders, Nicholas and Victor, some of the coolest people you'll ever meet. Klarna exploded. It's now become the default way that Scandinavians pay for things, even if they aren't using it to pay later. But buy now, pay later was copied in the US by Max Levchin, one of the co-founders of PayPal. It's called Affirm. It's publicly traded. And then you've got companies all over the planet now. There's one in the Middle East. There's some down in Southeast Asia. There's one in Africa that we had here pitched on stage. They're everywhere. Now, the question is, we've also noticed that the credit card companies, namely Visa and MasterCard, lately are starting to acquire lots of tech startups. It's about time. Welcome to the party. Now, this headline blew my mind. Buy now, pay later rollout now directly on Visa cards in Canada with 2 banks equips every Visa card with a buy now, pay later option for all merchants that accept Visa card products. Oh, snap. Holy cow. That's wow. Visa just got into the buy now, pay later game them damn selves. No startup needed. No changes needed at all. They now did the math, figured it out, deconstructed it, and indeed, they do know your credit history. That what enables these buy now, pay later startups that are exploding. Klarna, for example, just raised another, what was it? They just have a $45 billion valuation. I recall they raised several billion, 5 or 6 billion or something like that recently. And the reason these buy now, pay later companies are exploding is because the business model just works. But to make that business model work, you need to know the credit worthiness of the person making the purchase, of the buyer from the e-commerce shop. But this is even better because now you're buy now, pay later in any physical store, anywhere Visa is accepted, which is everywhere. So now Visa is essentially calculating and giving you real-time loans in real time, and they do know your credit worthiness because they know how quickly you pay your credit card back, essentially.
So Tyler, just to kind of lay this out, this is independently different from the Visa credit card processing network. This is actually Visa themselves making the loan,
correct,
right? I mean, because typically Visa is a conduit for a bank or a financial institution to make you a credit card loan,
right,
but this is actually Visa
correct,
taking their 3% transaction fees and essentially turning that into a credit facility.
Here's the article. Here's the
so Tyler.
Hold on, Kieran. Consumers want flexibility in terms of how they want to pay. Visa Canada Vice President and Head of Product and Digital, Brian Weiner told Karen Webster. They don't want to take on more debt, and they want to have flexibility in how they manage their cash flow. The conversation followed the news this week that Visa Canada, in tandem with Scotiabank and CIBC, will offer installment payment options to their, which by the way, that's how buy now pay later works, is you pay in installments, like four payments over 6 months or whatever. Will offer installment payment options to their card holders for online and in-person purchases. The option, in essence, will equip every Visa credit card with a buy now, pay later option for all merchants that accept Visa credit cards. By the way, merchants are going to love this, because now anyone who comes in your store, you can remind them, oh, you want this shiny new stereo system that you can't afford? Hey, it's no problem. You got the buy now, pay later 4 installments automatically baked into this transaction if you want it. Installment options will change the relationships the consumers and the merchants have with the final points of interaction, meaning the sellers, in a transaction, he predicted. It's an initiative in which application programming interfaces, APIs, leverage the full benefits of Visa's decades of connections with issuers and the core business of the banks, namely issue crediting. Exactly. They have the necessary ingredients to do this themselves, and I always wondered why they didn't do it, and now they're doing it. And I always...
So there's a two headline broke out in the last 24 hours in UK along that line. So basically, I don't know if many of you know, there's a Lloyds Bank in UK. It's a high street bank. Mm-hmm. So the headline broke out 10 hours ago. It says Lloyds Bank launches a home rental business. So it's like a high street bank going to have its first tenant within its next few weeks. Basically, they are going into a renting apartment business. Right? So I'll tell you why that is. And then yesterday, there's another headline broke out. John Lewis, it's one of the high street retail stores. It's like Selfridges and Harrods. They are building their own real estate apartments. Basically, what they're trying to do is they're going to build an apartment. They know your credit score. They can rent you, and also they can give you the option. Apparently, they're going to give you 3 options. One is that you can furnish all of the stuff from their store, and also they can give you clothing, for your office on a rental basis, pay later basis, all of that jazz. So this is something that you could never imagine. Banks going into a rental business. You have a retail store directly going into a building apartment, because they got this massive clout of real estate because of the the COVID. A lot of the stores being closed. They're turning all of that into a high-rise apartment, and then they're going to be furnishing with their with their things that they sell on the high street. So I think it's all fascinating how all of this stuff is heading.
Yeah, it is. But it's funny to see now the big companies are starting to act like startups, because that's how they'll get disrupted if they don't either merge with them, partner with them, or adopt their approach to things. It is super interesting.
Tyler, one more thing, just to clarify. I mean, Visa is doing it itself, or is partnering?
Here it is. As Weiner told Webster, we do connections very well. We do ecosystem very well. We do global very well. The initial solution, he said, is built on simplicity and seamlessness, and it is designed to scale in partnership with issuers and fintech providers around the world. The initial rollout at a high level, here it is. Scotiabank will be the first to debut the option with Scotia Select Pay beginning in August. Qualified Visa card customers can divvy up purchases they have made on the card. The other bank, CIBC, will launch its installment options for e-commerce purchases at checkout beginning next year. The installment offers, Weiner said, are carved out of existing credit lines that consumers have, tied to the cards that are already activated and in play. And because they are tailored to the individual applicants, he said, much of the dread and uncertainty of approval process is removed. And they're exactly right. This does remove the, your credit card was declined kind of thing. As he told Webster, with other options offered at the point of sale, you never know until the terminal says yes or no whether you're going to get it. In this case, you're just making a decision as to whether or not you want to accept the installment offer. Installments are gaining traction in Canada, where adoption of the payment option is up 30% year over year and accounts for more than 1.7 trillion Canadian dollars. So buy now, pay later is already happening without them, to the tune of $1.7 trillion in Canada alone. Holy shit.
You know what my mind just went into, Tyler, when you said the uncertainty of if you're going to be able to make the purchase or not? It almost turns each purchase into like a slot machine. With the one thing that's changed, though, is you absolutely know that you want that thing you're trying to buy, to the point where it's like, you're on pins and needles if someone's going to let you buy it or not. So the question on if you even want it is answered already, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah. Well, here's the details right here. In terms of mechanics, Weiner noted that in the store, a buyer simply has to present her Visa card at the point of sale, and an offer to divide the purchase price into monthly installments will appear. Magically, you'll be shown you have the option to split up your payment into 4 parts or such. There are no additional credit checks, forms, or additional hardware required at checkout. It is up to the issuer to set the terms and the offers served to the customer. So the issuer in this case is Scotiabank. At the high level, Scotiabank, I believe, is the one issuing this loan, essentially. Terms can vary for.
Yeah, so it's not Visa's own money.
Right, they are the
So
enabler.
they're just giving the network.
Yes,
they're giving the network, and then there's another party that gets involved, which is
Scotiabank
which I
in
guess will
this
have
case.
and then also which merchant takes this on, right?
They say
switches this
yeah,
on.
no, but it will apply to all merchants. Scotiabank, yeah, the article has already said it works anywhere Visa is accepted. So terms can vary from
with that bank. Right, got it.
Terms can vary from hold on one second. Terms can vary from 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, or the maximum 48 months. Holy shit. 4 years? I guess that's for like big purchases. Depending on the customer's available credit and other factors, lots of factors. It's all based on data. They're giving you a loan essentially from the bank. Depending on the customer's available credit and other factors, terms can also vary significantly from individual to individual. Exactly, because it's a loan and they're calculating it like based on your risk assessment, but just like Klarna does, just like all of the buy now pay later, they are using lots and lots of signals and variables to calculate your risk. Your flight risk.
Can I get a good citizenship discount?
Yeah, absolutely. If by the way, now
it's how to lay a debt trap for you, Tyler. It's how to lay a debt.
Yeah, that the credit cards already know a thing or two about that. Merchants have an opportunity to weigh in and ultimately decide what offers to the end customer sees. Oh, wow, that's clever. So the merchant can decide which of those different options we just discussed that the customer can choose. The issuer loads all of the installment offers, but it is the merchant that looks at everything that's being loaded in and what they want to present. Oh, that's wild. So Scotiabank gives up the options that they're comfortable with, at the terms they feel comfortable with based on that person at that time and that purchase. And then the seller can say, actually, here's this option for you if you want it, or here's 2 options if you want them, or here's 3. It's up to them which ones they want the buyer to become aware of. That gives the merchant the ability to ultimately filter out what offers they want to extend to the end user and what they may wish to present to increase conversion, he said. It's important because the buy now, pay later model is proving to be a key determinant in whether merchants will make a sale. Got it. Because I guess the seller doesn't actually get paid until they essentially are part of this, where they're not going to get paid until the consumer pays that 3rd payment or 4th payment, and they are willing.
Oh, it's layaway. It's layaway.
Tyler,
Yeah.
just quickly wanted to come in.
Lady first. Hold on, Karam. Ladies first. Go ahead.
Sure.
10 years ago, any shop you would do in Brazil, the option will come out of the machine saying you can pay up to 4 installments without any, increase on your final number. And that is being used in Latin America per se for ages. So, and was like a Visa card, and was like just installments on your Visa card that will come. And even American Express had that. Even American Express started in Brazil without having any bank behind them, and they used to issue that 4 payments, no interest, and then more than 4 payments with interest. But the machine will say, and you tap in the machine how many payments you want to do, and do it on the machine. 10 years ago.
Yeah. So it's a really interesting to see them get into this. I tweeted the article out.
Tyler,
Yeah, go ahead.
quickly, I don't think fundamentally anything is changing. I mean, it's just like Visa name is there. That's why it looks like it's just a revolutionary thing. I mean, effectively, any store. If you go to Best Buy, I mean, Best Buy has got the linkage with one of the financial institution and say, here you go, you take my card and you buy whatever you want, and here's your credit line. So effectively, Visa is saying that, okay, if you hold this card, which we have actually done that, you can go and buy on installment. So only thing is changing. I mean, you already have the credit line. This is what the credit limit is, and then your only thing is changing is that you can use that credit line by paying without the interest, and that's all pretty much. Otherwise, your credit line is there. You can actually buy whatever you want, wherever you want. Now, the problem is, other point I wanted to bring in, Visa is not just about the credit card. Visa is also about the debit card. So all the debit cards don't have any credit line. It's whatever is in your bank account, that's what it is. So to claim that the Visa is allowing some sort of like a payment plan, how is going to work with a debit card? So, I mean, this is simply false advertising, I think, in my opinion.
Wait, can we hear, Tyler, if it's okay, can we hear Cal's opinion on this, given the fact that he's probably done this much more than any of us?
No, really. I mean, this is look, Best Buy used to have an arrangement with HSBC, right? It's a standard partnership, if you like, right? And so and they have their own credit. Effectively, you can get a card, but at the same time, you can have your own card, but you can basically buy some things on credit, and it's a assessment that HSBC does, and you get you want to buy a television on credit, the HSBC will loan you the money, and it's got an interest rate and a payment plan, which is usually monthly at that time. So to the extent that but it has interest, right? These, as far as I understand, Tyler, correct me, the Klarna and all these other guys, there's no interest involved in like, say, 4 installment payments.
Generally, right?
So yeah, generally. So you're right that there's a value proposition for the consumer here where you have no interest to pay. So it's kind of, as Chris said, kind of an organized layaway, right? And layaway. Sorry, hang on.
Sorry, go ahead, Cal.
Just one finished statement. We shouldn't underestimate the whole concept of layaway, right? We're all pretty well off here. Like, we're all like, we can pay it in full price. It's okay. And when we use our credit cards, we pay them off. We don't get into debt. And so I'm assuming generally a number of people that are having this discussion are kind of in that situation. But there's so many people that live paycheck to paycheck, right? And so many people, right? And that's how they operate. And it's a normal way of operating. I want to get that luxury for my family. I want to get that television for my family. And they've had to pay a lot of interest for that if they wanted to get it on credit. And they would pay it, and they'd pay a lot of interest. So the value proposition of buying a luxury item, like I'm going to use this for an example because it's like the number one thing that I think, Peloton, right? So it's an expensive luxury, but why can't I have it? Because I've been working hard, but now I can get it, right? So that, and I don't have to pay it's at the same price as everyone else. So I think that's the value proposition. And then the other thing is the customer experience that you get, because I'm telling you, the experience of getting that loan when you're buying that TV at the cashier, there, and not being rejected, it's embarrassing for a human being, right? And I know that firsthand. That's something I used to fight against the CFO on and advocate for how we did that in Best Buy when I was there, because I didn't like the way that we used to attach these things. We used to keep, we used to look at the number of attaching. Every time we sold one of these loans, effectively, that went with it, and that was an attachment. They actually started putting the numbers up, using it in the morning chalk talk, which is where you go rah, what are the numbers for today? And so retailers get crazy, and people get into debt, and it's high interest, right? So I think new propositions where people can get layaway, they don't pay as much interest. I think somebody's mic's on, but John, maybe, yeah. But so people don't, they get a better experience. It's much more predictable, that experience. You go with your children, you go to a shop, go to with children, hey, we're going to buy this wonderful product, and then suddenly you can't buy it. It's so embarrassing, right? And so you've got to think about people. You got to think about people that want to buy stuff that they can't afford it straight away. So That's all I've got to add to that. I'm actually learning more about this now, though.
Carl,
Tyler,
just to
Tyler, may I
clarify.
quickly say something? Tyler, may I just quickly say something and then finish it off, and then maybe Khurram come in. Tyler, okay.
Just go ahead.
Go ahead, Frans.
Yeah, sure. So from my understanding, at that point in time, Cal, if I'm correct, the credit card companies and the vendor at this point in time, there would be a clear breach of trust to the client if they shared data, other than whatever the financials are being shared, right? So if you're talking about buy now, pay later in the form of Klarna, then if there's no interest, then what they're doing is free. And in the case of anything being free, the product is you, hence the product is the data. Hence, the product is being shared between the vendor and the company. So clearly, it would be a part of the terms and conditions that Klarna would have signed by their customers that data is being shared and hence consumer trends are being shared. So that is the product that is being sold to Klarna, and hence that is their USP, and that is what they're clearly gaining and making money off of. So that's the difference, and I'll leave it at
Yeah,
that.
no, they are.
Please,
They are selling the data, and Johan actually laid that out for us a week ago, I think.
Okay.
Cal, just to clarify, in UK it's slightly different. In the US,
It's too much.
that's why I was giving the best.
We don't need the
Sure, go ahead.
what's happening with payment systems in Botswana at the moment. So we're going to jump into the bigger headlines at the moment. Dan, if you're on,
Trump's done, by the way. If you want to know, Tyler, you let me know when.
anything.
He's still talking, but his substance is done.
Anything hot that he's saying thus far? What I'm reading from the live transcript is he's saying it's all about free speech and it's going to the Supreme Court.
No. So here's what he said. Okay, so they spent a lot of time about the First Amendment and everything, and so the suit he's filing is not him personally. He's the lead litigant in a class action along with this advocacy group that was part of the press release and whoever else joins, and presumably maybe some other people. We've had some people on Clubhouse who've had who've been banned from YouTube and everything about their views on COVID and stuff like that. So he's hoping to get a large class of people with him as the lead plaintiff and he's suing, Twitter and Google and Facebook as well as their CEOs. And he's also asking for unspecified monetary damages. But when I heard the First Amendment thing, I kind of was like ignoring it because it was like they're private companies and the First Amendment is a restriction on government, not private companies. But they're doing something very novel. Then I started paying attention. Trump's basic argument, the argument that they're going to use, is that Section 230 is being used by the government because the government passed Section 230. It's a congressional law. Is being used by the government to deputize private companies to deprive people of their First Amendment rights. So that's how they're trying to hold these private companies to a First Amendment violation that they've been essentially deputized by 230 by Congress, and therefore that's why it's illegal. And
That makes
apparently, yeah.
no sense. No, I believe you on the story, but that makes no sense. That's not at all what Section 230 does. That makes no sense. What Section 230 does is provides a safe harbor for platforms, and it's the condition precedent on it is that you provide no moderation, right? So the protection is based on the absence of action. So it makes no sense at all that they would say that 230 somehow deputizes them because that implies action, and 230 is based entirely on inaction. That it's a very bizarre argument. I would be
No,
very
but Alexandra, that's his
goes anywhere.
his argument. No, his argument is exactly that: is that they've done moderation, but only on conservatives. They've taken him off and not liberals. Okay, and the fact that there's a liability shield is effectively what the government's done to allow these companies to do that. If there wasn't a liability shield, they wouldn't be taking him off these platforms. That's his argument.
And then there's an
I just don't
analysis in
think that
Wired
that's how it
magazine.
works, though. That's not how. I mean, I understand what you're saying. I'm just that's not how it works. That if they are acting, then they are not. Then they do not have the shield of the shield from liability. There's nothing connecting them to to any sort of government action. All it is a safe harbor. So if you act in whatever manner, it doesn't matter if it's biased or unbiased, right? If you act in some manner and it can be shown that you're acting in some manner that is moderation of some sort, then you lose your safe harbor. It doesn't have anything to do with becoming some sort of advocate or a biased advocate for the government or anything like that. All it is it's like it's you either get it or you don't. So this to me is like, it doesn't have anything to do with what they're doing. It just says if you're doing it. So this is a very strange argument. I will be interested to see how it plays out.
Yeah, Alexander, this is John. I want to ask a quick question. If you read the Wired article on Section 230 several months ago, what the claim that those analysts made about Section 230 is that as long as you don't do any moderation, you have a safe harbor. But the moment you start moderating in any way, you open yourself up to liability from all directions. Is that not true? Because that was the synthesis in the Wired
that's
article.
exactly what I'm saying.
That's how I've always. That's how I've always understood it, and that's why I get really confused when I see them getting into any of it, because I feel like they're potentially risking losing their safe harbor Section 230 status by even kicking people off, silencing people, muting people, banning people, et cetera, et cetera. So it's confusing me.
But look, just throwing
This
this
is
out there,
Elle,
like
but isn't
these
it
rules were
like
drafted like a decade or two ago before there were trillion-dollar tech companies. So I mean, the rules are arbitrary. We made them up. So I mean, it's like we can change them to make them harsher or better or not as harsh. I mean, these are things that can be adjusted. It's just a matter of if there's a significant amount of the population that doesn't like it, then it's like it's just going to go through the democratic process. Something just sort of throw out there as a more interesting direction with things. Why are we basically arguing about whether or not one company or another is deciding whether or not someone says something? Like, shouldn't there be like a public space with things? Like, the post office has one of the largest technical infrastructures in the world for like data communications. It's just not really used in a very public manner. Like, why don't we have postal versions of like YouTube or Twitter or things? This is public communication. Shouldn't there be some sort of actual competent government thing for something? I mean, I think it's kind of sad that we basically rely on. Or I mean, like we figured out how to do web video thing like 15 years ago. I mean, Twitter is something we could have built 30 if we really wanted to. We didn't, but that's fine. But it's not that hard to clone. The main thing is a vendor lock-in. Why aren't we having public alternatives to these spaces for public related discourse? I mean, we could basically have all of our discussions about whether or not something's censored on that thing, rather than basically mixing together the civic and private discourse with stuff in a way that's basically creating harm to both. So just throwing it out there.
There are zero government entities that would ever want to deal with that particular thing because that's exactly in the First Amendment issue. And the First Amendment does not allow any speech whatsoever. It has limitations. There's a lot of them, actually. So it's not like this unfettered release of free speech. So there's no government agency that's going to want to moderate that and deal with the time and place issues and all of that. I mean, there's a huge amount of rules involved. But Section 230 is like this lone fragment from this 1996 Fair Decency and Communications Act that's pretty much gone.
It was for piracy stuff. It wasn't about civic speech at that time.
So what it was about is this they had at that time brochures, right? About that's all the internet was basically companies putting up their brochures digitally. They didn't know what to. It was before even e-commerce really did anything. So what they were saying is, and there was no comment or anything like that. There was no comment section on things. There wasn't anything like that. It was essentially that if you allowed other people to put up their brochures on your site, that you wouldn't be liable for those brochures. That's what this was about, was at that time. There wasn't anything about hate speech or commentary, or there wasn't flaming cyberbullying or any of that stuff. That's why this is kind of a ridiculous act at this point. It's just a vestige that exists that was expanded as platforms started adding on content. And the big issue was when comments happened, right? What happens when you write an article or you're Huffington Post and you write an article and then the comments are these flaming comments that attack people or gather people to jointly attack somebody. And it was decided that Section 230 could be used to shield any action that existed between the posters. That doesn't mean you're not liable if you say stuff. It just means you can't also the person that you attack can't also sue the platform for enabling that speech. So they say, okay, well, we can't be sued if someone says some crazy shit all over the place here. We can't be sued for it. So that's why you see no moderation on commentary. The only moderation that's happened is after the fact with Facebook, because and a few other sites, because they had these actions against them regarding hate speech. Hate speech falls under a different category. So and child, so there was like child porn stuff, like all stuff that is outside the purview of this. Even if you have Section 230, you still cannot be a purveyor of things like child porn or torture or things like that. Like there's other laws that supersede it. So after the fact, they go back and have these people who live these miserable lives going through all these hideous posts and deciding which ones to take down.
Okay.
So, I mean, this stuff didn't emerge in a vacuum, and I know Tyler wants to move on to that subject. Just briefly, like, we've had book trolls since, like the 70s and the 80s with stuff. This didn't come out of nowhere. Just throwing it up there. Sorry, Tyler, take it away.
And Chris, you're a bit soft on your mic. It sounds like you're a foot away from your mic or so.
Tyler, just one more point quickly. I don't know whether somebody actually paid attention to the overall layout of the press conference. The podium exactly looked like it's a White House, and the background is all white pillars, and it says the office of Donald Trump, and the emblem of President of the United States is there. So it's exactly like, current president, the way he used to do the press conferences. So that angle is interesting, that former president coming up and saying all that and conducting the press conference similar fashion as he used to do.
Interesting observation there. Okay, I got some really interesting headlines here at the moment, and sharing your treasure could supercharge TV. Okay, here we go. Just blasting through some here. TikTok set to make a comeback in India. Officials ready to comply with Indian IT law. Whether or not they will welcome them back, of course, is a whole other issue. But I think TikTok is looking at what's going on with Facebook and Twitter and saying, hey, we can comply with that. Can we come back? Pretty.
Also, India and China don't like each other, right?
Right. I think this is going to be very interesting to see if India will welcome them back, because if not, then we know it's personal. It's like, we already knew that because they kicked out 200 Chinese apps simultaneously. Clearly, it had nothing to do with the app individually. It had to do with the fact that they're from China. So I don't know that TikTok has a snowball's chance in hell with getting back in, even if they're willing to comply with. It's not about complying with India's rules. It's about the fact that you're Chinese and your data, you're going to suck that data back to China. That's a big part of the problem, TikTok. You know better than that, TikTok. Japan's digital yen plan to become clearer late 2022, says ruling party official. Japan will have more clarity on what a digital yen would look like late next year, a lawmaker overseeing the ruling party's digital currency plan said, which is big news because Japan is still very much cash. So the idea of Japan getting off cash, that's going to be an interesting one, because that's a very ingrained habit in Japanese culture. But thank you for sharing that one, Frans. I just shared that one and the previous one about TikTok in India to the Tech News Twitter account at TNATW. And now this one I happen to be an expert on. So hold on to your hats, everybody. I'm retweeting it now. I'm surprised to see somebody bring this in. I saw it myself on the interwebs like 48 hours ago. It got really popular on Reddit, where a whole bunch of Redditors totally, fundamentally misunderstand what's happening. And everyone reading this article, the journalist who wrote this article, fundamentally do not understand what's going on. And I do. And I'm one of the very few people that do. And I'm going to help you understand it so that you can straighten out your crazy uncle or aunt at the next barbecue, or your idiot coworkers at the water cooler or at the coffee machine. So here's what's going on. The headline says, Taylor Swift doesn't need to earn streaming royalties, according to a former Spotify boss who said the company is a distribution platform that wasn't built to pay artists money. Now, when that headline came out, the internet went berserk and said, this former Spotify boss said what no one's supposed to say. He said it out loud, that the whole point of Spotify was to be a distribution platform and was never meant to pay artists. Oh, snap, he said it out loud. They were never meant to pay artists. Oh my God, he just self-owned himself. Oh my God, they just admitted it. Finally, a former employee admitted it. They were never meant to pay artists. And guess what? He's right. They were never meant to pay artists. but you have to read what he actually said, but watch how this journalist fundamentally is just completely getting everything wrong, and I'm going to get it right for you. Watch. Former Spotify boss Jim Anderson said the platform was designed to distribute music, not pay artists. I think Taylor Swift doesn't need 0.00001 penny more a stream. Apple's music average pay per play is 1 cent. Spotify takes around 250 streams to make $1. See more stories inside. And then it says, a Spotify boss who is credited with helping to create the Swedish music streaming platform said Spotify was never built to pay artists. Here's the quote. Spotify was created to solve a problem, said Jim Anderson, who also co-founded About.com at a 2019 music industry conference in New York, according to a newly released recording of the event. That's right. This all stemmed from an interview, an audio interview that was just released. The problem was this: piracy and music distribution. The problem was to get artists' music out there. The problem was not to pay people money. He's right. The problem that Spotify was built to, and he's exactly right. And then let me finish this journalist's complete misunderstanding where it says Anderson's comments were recorded by singer-songwriter Ashley Jana, who didn't share the recording until this week for fear of retribution from the music industry. The comments now made public follow a growing push for music streaming platforms to raise royalties, or the amount artists are paid per stream. Artists are really broke, Jana told Anderson at the 2019 event. We're not making any money off the streams. Some of you know what I'm going to say because you've heard me address this issue before.
Let's just be honest here. It's not an income problem. It's a spending problem for them.
Well, no, it's not only that. It's a rights problem. Is artists don't own their streaming rights, which is why Spotify.
Right, the money goes to the distribution company.
Right? The money goes to whoever owns the rights. Here's what's happening. Spotify isn't about paying artists money. Spotify is about paying the rights owners money. Whoever owns it. Spotify has the songs. The only way Spotify can get the songs is if they pay the rights owners for their songs. The question is, who is the rights owner? The artists? No, the artists aren't the rights owners of their own songs because they signed a contract with a record label that gave their rights to a record label. So guess who Spotify pays for the rights to those songs? The record label who owns the rights to the songs. Spotify has no interest in and has no reason and should not pay money to artists who have nothing to do with those songs. They no longer own the rights to those songs.
Thank you so much, Tyler.
Right.
Tyler, question.
Now hold on. So listen to the quote again. He said, Taylor Swift doesn't need to earn streaming royalties because she doesn't own the rights to the streaming royalties. The labels do in the contract that she signed. The point is, and everybody misunderstands this, and everybody on Reddit misunderstood this, and this journalist writing this article misunderstands this. The artists don't own the rights to the streaming rights to their songs. The labels do. When the artist signs a record contract with a record label, there are words on a piece of paper in English, in black ink on white paper that say, we're going to give you money to go, a fund to go record. I signed one of these contracts myself, and I read my contract, and it did say they own all of my digital distribution streaming rights. That means they're the ones who are going to get paid when my music is streamed digitally and distributed digitally, meaning Spotify, not me, the artist. Them, they own it. I signed it. I got money. They got my rights. Why the fuck would Spotify pay me when I just gave my rights sold my rights to somebody else? They're not going to pay me or any other artist who signed away their rights as part of these contracts. So stop asking Spotify to pay fucking artists, you dumb fucking artists. You signed away your fucking streaming rights to a fucking record label. Stop with this stupid charade, shenanigans, nonsense. I don't get any money when Spotify streams my songs. Damn fucking right you don't get any fucking money. Read your fucking contract that you signed, you stupid fuck. And stop going to the journalists who are also confused and telling a journalist, hey, journalist, look at my stats. Look at my analytics. I got streamed 50 billion times and I got paid 1 penny. And the journalist says, well, that's wrong. That's clearly wrong. That's clearly egregious. Holy shit. Stop the presses. Hey, editors, I got a hot story. Click. Spotify's screwing over artists. Oh, I got a smoking one now. We're really going to get them this time. Click, push, send, publish, clickbait article. That's what's happening.
Okay, so there's willful
Tyler,
There are people
misrepresentation
who are
happening,
now
but
trying
the
to
question
evade
is
that
like,
issue
should
with
that be
the.
the case with
One at a
artists?
time, guys.
Affect artists and
Jesus
Step back.
Christ.
So again, back to the headline. The guy, Jim Anderson, who built the platform, said it correctly. Spotify was not built. Here's the headline. Spotify boss shockingly admits in a huge conspiracy. Spotify boss who said the company is a distribution platform that wasn't built to pay artists money. That's right. It was never meant to pay artists money. Ever. That was never the problem. The problem was to distribute digitally the music. That's the problem they were trying to solve. How to get this music heard by people legally, separate from the illegal way that it was being done on Napster. How do we distribute music digitally, legally? That was the problem they solved. That's why they're worth $50 billion, because they solved that problem. And guess who's paying them to solve that problem? Essentially, the record labels, who are also a co-owner of Spotify, by the way. They hold equity in Spotify, and the advertisers. Win, 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 win for everybody. Everybody wins, except this artist who stupidly gave away their digital streaming rights to the labels. The labels have no problem with this. They love it. It saved their ass. Absolutely saved the music industry's ass. Completely, utterly. Advertisers love it. They get a new audience. You love it. Matter of fact, you love it so much you're paying Spotify $12 a month because you love it so much. Spotify loves it. Spotify shareholders loves it. The only person that loses is the idiot who didn't read what they fucking signed. End of story.
I think the real solution is
Okay, Donna.
the artists need to own their
Guys,
contracts.
Hang on.
That's what
Donna.
it is. You shouldn't have signed the contract,
Well,
and artists need to focus on owning their
hi.
masters. That's what it is. That's
So
The
Tyler,
very
Go ahead,
so
Donna.
that people are
So
trying to
can
get
I?
around this by issuing these as
Jesus.
NFTs.
One at a
That's
time.
still
One at a
digital
time.
Okay,
music.
we're going to go.
Those are
Guys,
Hold on one second.
guys,
Let's do
Donna.
this. Pause, everybody. Flash your mic if you have a hot take to give so we can see who's got a hot take. So going from top to bottom here, let me refresh my screen so we can see all these people who never signed record deals that got a hot take here. We got Donna.
High take.
Okay, Donna first.
And then Faraz,
Okay,
and then
so
L,
Faraz,
and then
L.
Alexandra. Okay, let's go. Go ahead, Donna.
Donna,
So there
Faraz,
was
L, Alexander.
there was a very interesting startup called PaperChain that was addressing some of these issues. And one of the issues is that the record labels, even though they know both from Amazon and Spotify on a day-to-day basis, not only how much they're owed, but exactly what musicians played and how much played and what the money is and what was popular and all that kind of stuff. They only get their money in T plus 90 days, and then the artist gets it in T plus 180. And so, doing receivables financing for record labels is incredibly expensive. So what PaperChain was trying to do was to use the DeFi market, and this was a little while ago, to use the DeFi market to be able to get cheaper receivables financing for the record companies that could then pay out to the artists earlier, or decide that they would like to use that money, which they would receive much earlier, like almost immediately, in order to plow it back into advertising for or whatever it is for the songs that were popular. So there are companies that are trying to at least get to the record labels and the artists the money sooner, because it's being locked up by Spotify and Amazon for 90 days, and then the record labels by contract up to almost 180 days. And as I think Alexandra said, the NFT market is with somebody like Justin Blau is trying to reset this whole way in which artists sell their music, own their music, and then maybe just stream or whatever their music.
Okay, thank you, Faraz.
Faraz, go on.
I love his dramatic build-up.
The tension is killing me.
Yes. Go ahead, Frans.
We'll go to L then.
We can't.
Yes. So, Tyler, quick one. Even I understand the streaming parts, even though I have nothing to do with this. I just have a question.
It's not complex. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So, as far as the Taylor Swifts of the past and what they've done with the streaming services, that's fine. What about the new Taylor Swifts to be found? What if they don't want to go to a record label and they come to Spotify and they say, "Guys, we need help."
Right.
What
happens then is truly fantastic, which is exactly what is the real beauty of Spotify, and which the Spotify would love to enable, which is the artists are going to go put their the question is, does Spotify allow unsigned artists onto their platform? That's a great question, and the answer is they absolutely love unsigned artists on their platform. And if you're an unsigned artist on their platform, they probably are promoting you more than you probably should be, because they want you to be successful to a point, and they're now getting to a point, and Jack Dorsey from Twitter, who also owns a fintech called Square, which just got its banking paperwork in order so it can actually issue loans as an actual bank. The day after it got its banking paperwork in order and became a bank that can make loans, the 24 hours later, it bought Spotify's competitor called Tidal. That's not a coincidence. Why not? Because now they can do what Tidal always wanted to do. What Jay-Z always wanted to do with Tidal is support the artists to make their own music. The problem was he couldn't give them loans to do it, because record labels are essentially banks. They give you a loan in exchange for your rights. That's the exchange. I'm giving you cash. You're giving me your rights. That's what a record deal is. That's why artists don't own their rights. Now,
so Tyler, let me ask you.
Pause. I'm just getting to the good part. Now, with Tidal, wanted to do was let the artists own their own rights, but they were not a bank themselves. So they partnered with Jack Dorsey, who just became a bank 24 hours previously. And Square bought Tidal, and now Square as a fintech is a data company, and we even heard Jay-Z and Jack Dorsey in Twitter Spaces. Cheryl and I were in the room with them about a week and a half ago, where they talked about we need the tools, and the data, and crypto and some payment and whatever. And what it gets down to is I did a very long Twitter stream of like 13 tweets in a row that Jack Dorsey liked that explained essentially Square as a bank with Tidal are going to look at the data of the streams. And to answer your question, Frans, if an unsigned artist is on the platform, they can watch that just like you can watch any YouTube creator or any Instagram influencer and look at how many likes they're getting, how many followers they're getting, how many retweets they're getting, blah, 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 blah. And are they growing? Is their fan base growing? When we recommend their music to people, do people like it? Oh, they do? Oh, fantastic. Recommend it more. Wow, this is good music. It's worth investing in. So we, as a fintech company that can issue loans, can now say to you, Faraz, hey, Faraz, we've been sharing your music with people, and people seem to like it. We've done the math. We know how big you're going to be in 6 months. We know how much revenue you could be earning in 6 months. Why don't we give you a loan right now, and you keep your own rights so that when we stream your music, you will get paid. We will pay you because you're the owner of your own fucking rights. We're not going to take them from you. So, better yet, we already know that when we play your song, we are going to get paid first, and we're going to pay back the loan. We're going to take the money from the advertisers. We're going to keep the money until your loan is paid back. And you're wondering, how long will that take? And how will I ever get the loan paid back? Will you collect enough advertising money from enough listens to pay my loan back? And then you know what they're going to tell you? You know what, Frans? That's a great question, because we control how many people listen to your songs. We control the exposure and the distribution volume. So we could pay back your loan tomorrow if we wanted to and blast it to every user on our whole platform tomorrow and pay back the loan tomorrow. It's a risk-free loan from our perspective. No bank in the world can pay back a loan because banks don't own the distribution of the digital products. And that's why it is a truly amazing thing. And that's why Jack Dorsey liked my tweet, because Square is going to become the bank for creatives based on data and analytics of their creations. and they're going to make risk-free loans to creators to keep their own rights. And it's a truly beautiful situation, and Spotify knows it. And that's why Spotify's either trying to get their own banking license or partner with and merge with or acquire a company who has official bank status to issue loans, because this is where it's going. And yes, those loans could be.
So Tyler, I think.
Yeah. By the way,
you're missing a point.
Go ahead, Ross. Sorry, Kieran. No, but Kieran, you have to hold, because we have to go in order, and then we'll come back to the next person up was L, and then Alexandra, and then we'll come to you, Kieran. Go ahead, L.
Hey, you hit everything that I was going to talk about with the banking and the distribution, but also this was the same argument, part of the same argument they recently had, I think earlier this year with Kakao, and with them removing all of like the Korean music from Spotify in a push Spotify to raise their rates so they can get more money, but to also try to monopolize Melon. But yeah, you took most of everything I was going to say, so I cannot agree with you more. So
okay,
go ahead and end it.
Thanks. Who was next? Alexandra, go ahead.
Alexandra. Yeah.
Oh, mine was just there's a huge new market developing in NFTs, and I have no doubt that Spotify is actually going to start adding the ability to do that. Right. But I've gotten a lot of questions from songwriters about whether or not they could use NFTs to circumvent this.
Yes.
But no, it's still digital music. So
yeah, you still need
you
still need to build an audience somehow. Yeah. That's the tricky bit, is the distribution, which is why this guy in this headline, the former boss, Jim Anderson, said, the problem we were solving is to be a distribution platform. The problem was not about how to pay the rights holders their money. That's easy. That's a piece of cake. That's simple. In fact, it's not even digital. We email them and say, hey, how much does it cost to get your entire catalog of EMI of the Beatles and the Beach Boys and everything, the Pink Floyd and everything? There's only 4 big rights holder companies, by the way. All of these labels are huge conglomerates. EMI, Universal Music, Warner Brothers, that's it. And that's the entire music catalog of all Western music. So you need to do a partnership with all 4 of the big 4, and now you've got the entire music canon of all the music that can be streamed. And they're going to negotiate with you very heavily to give that to you. And they don't just give it to anybody. And you're going to by the way, when Daniel Ek went to Warner Brothers to meet with Tom Whalley, the president of Warner Brothers, the CTO of Warner Brothers at that time was my college roommate, Ethan. And Ethan called me the day that happened and said, you'll never guess who came into the office today. I said, oh, who? Oh, Daniel Ek from Spotify. I said, oh, really? How'd that go? Oh, he got thrown out of the office. Oh, really? Oh, I guess Warner's is not going to be on Spotify, because Warner's was the last one to join. And they really wanted Warner to join, and they were the last standout. So it was a strong negotiation. Well, we're the last left, so if you really want us, so that you can really say that you have really all the music, you're going to have to pay very, 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 very dearly. In fact, you're going to have to give us a big chunk of your company. So the labels own a bit of Spotify as part of the giving up of the rights that the artists don't own and do not get paid for, and nor should they get a fucking penny out of 1 billion streams, because they signed their name on a piece of paper that says, you're giving me money for my streaming rights. So please, journalists, stop.
If you have a record deal,
yes.
If you have a record deal and you've signed away your digital rights, what I meant to clarify also is just that an NFT is not a way around. There's nothing special about blockchain that takes you out of that digital rights issue.
Correct.
If you signed away your rights, you're still using digital music on the blockchain.
Correct.
So
it's digital distribution. That's right. However, there was a window of opportunity about 6 months ago, maybe even until relatively recently, where if you were an artist and you were doing a record negotiation for a contract with one of the big record labels, you could potentially have said, hey, we see that there's a clause here that you want all of the digital distribution streaming rights. Okay, we understand what that means. That means Spotify and everything. We agree to that but we want to carve out a little exception under clause Article 5, Section 32C that says we want to include language that says we actually maintain the usage of our music in the case of the blockchain. And the label's going to say, the blockchain? Why the fuck what are you going to do with your music on the blockchain? We don't. Is that? And then they're going to ask their legal team, do we know anything about the blockchain? What's the blockchain? I've never heard of it. I don't know. Yeah, sure. You can have the blockchain. And if you were one of those very lucky artists that did that early on, then you could do whatever the fuck you want on NFTs and on have your own coins and do NFTs, and you own all of that. And then you can be selling your music and playing your music and doing whatever the fuck you want through NFTs. But I'm curious how many artists fell in that kind of, calendar gap where before the labels figured out what NFTs are. But they certainly know what they are now.
So Tyler, what it is, it's all about, let's come back to the cost of capital, right? So look, all the artists, they want free money. So the reason that the record companies did that way is because, there was a cost of capital. So now you're saying the Square is going into it. Do you know who lends, so who's going to be writing the check? So somebody has to write the loans to Square, which is a Celtic Bank. Celtic Bank is a triple B rated. So, for example, they recently done about 100,000 loans so they are more of an asset finance and SME kind of a loan, kind of a bank. So they do through Square. So they lend about 100,000 businesses in US to $1 billion. You know what the interest they charge for each loan? Because they are triple B rated. So let me ask you a question about 10%. So the point is this, right? Let's assume the entire music ecosystem and musicians, 90% of them, let's say in a lifetime, they'll only make between 0 to 10 million. Let's say you charge a 10% interest, Tyler, on that. Let's say I'm a record label. I'm just, investing 10 million. It's going to cost me about £1 million over the period of $1 million over the period of their career. Do you think 90% of the artists in the fucking entire world makes 1 million from the streaming that pennies that Spotify pays? I doubt it.
It does, but that's an irrelevant question, Kieran, because they're not going to give.
You waived
which of the artists will be able to pay it back?
No, the point is this, Tyler, right? So this is why. Okay, so
they're not randomly giving out loans, Kieran. They're giving out loans to the artists who are going to be a good investment.
So no, absolutely. So the point is this, right? So, but if you go into what Dorsey and what Jay-Z is trying to do, they're trying to go into the volume business, right? So what they're trying to do is come in here, right? We will do the filtering mechanism because we understand how the music industry works. We're going to, use that filter to make sure that, we kind of get rid of the middle ground. We just focus on the tail, where high, rates of success. But it's still, somebody has to write the money, which is going to be Celtic Bank. Square uses Celtic Bank. They are a triple B rated, so they are an asset finance company. So there is going to be a cost of capital associated with when that Jack Dorsey and Jay-Z sits on that room and say, hey, thank you very much. Let's shake hands. We've done all of the data. We know how much presence you have in your social media. We know you're going to be fantastic. Okay, there's going to be 10% charge. You know what?
Kieran, from what I heard Tyler say, that's a separate issue, right? So yes, there's a cost of capital. It's 10% today. Let's assume that Spotify succeeds in its ability to Tyler's hypothesis he just put out there. Not hypothesis. It's probably already starting to happen with the emerging artists, at least bringing them in and controlling their success, like accelerating it, slowing it down, etc. So let's assume they have this ability to do that as a platform, right? So let's say they get it at 10% today and the volume goes up. They'll renegotiate with another bank and get it at whatever interest rate. That's the cost of capital issue. But what I heard Tyler say and what I'm just trying to understand here and what I'm understanding is what you've now got is Spotify in control of that business model, right? Of that cash flow, of that return of capital, because you can accelerate, like you can promote like crazy. And then there's another factor. So you can accelerate or slow it down. And then you learn about your own bets because you see who's successful, who isn't. And you've got more data than any of these record companies ever had, right? You've got so much more data. So that's number 3. And then the third thing, just quickly, I think that's different here is that the record labels had a lot of cost, right?
Tons.
To promote these bands because they're doing it physically. They're doing it through traditional media. Simon Cowell's got a TV show, and these guys have Spotify, the platform, the cost-effective platform that they built, right? So that's what I've heard from what Tyler was saying. I don't know if I.
In all fairness, the label loses money on most artists they sign. The way their model works is they make their money back out of the 1 out of 30 that actually breaks through to become a major success.
It's like venture capital.
It is very much like venture capital, yes.
And Kieran, to your point, I know the interest rates are challenging, but as a startup founder, when I see some of the returns these VCs want, I ask myself, why don't I just go get a big freaking credit card or go to a
Chris,
loan
quick
shark,
one.
right?
Chris, quick one, brother, quick one, right? So you're making a fair comparison there, but forgive me for saying it's the incorrect comparison. Because first of all, I mean, sure, you know, when you look at these artists, they're a bet. But what you've got here is even if they have to pay a 10% cost of capital or a 20% cost of capital or a 30% cost of capital, usually when an artist succeeds, the multiple on that artist is huge. Now, when you've got a risk-free artist that you control, 10% is nothing. Even if they have to pay that 10% out of their pocket for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and they have the risk-free data, the asymmetrical flow of data that guarantees that return, they'll pay it. So the question doesn't even apply over here. I mean, it's a bet that anyone would take. They have asymmetrical data over the artist and control of the cash flow of the artist, which is it's an unbeatable position. I'll stop there.
I have a point to make on this. So when you're talking about that unbeatable position, you say that the record labels essentially, there's only like 3 or 4, and Warner's last one of the things, so they can say, hey, we don't just want paying for things, we want actual ownership of the company. Like, why is there's a lot of people that have content on Spotify, but it's a fixed number. Like, it's not like an uncountable number. Why don't they have percentage ownership in Spotify? Like, why isn't there like a class of shares just for those people? Because they're obviously like contributing value to the platform. Another point to put on this when you say solving the distribution issue, once they solve it, then essentially you have a contract signed. Once you have a contract signed, essentially it's there, it's done, you're there. There are schools of thought where, this is more like Lawrence Lessig, like the free software type kind of people or whatever, where the idea of intellectual property is something we kind of made up, and it's something that, there's a significant fraction of people that are wondering, should it even exist? I mean, now we build amazing multi-billion-dollar enterprises of these other things, probably even $1 trillion if you include some of the, some branches of software stuff. But the thing is that we made the system up. When you basically sign away rights, not just for essentially for lifetime of artists and other things on top of it, this basically results in a large cultural setup that we have that it results in certain distribution patterns.
Oh, sorry, Chris, I didn't see you.
Yeah, one last point before turning it over. For music specifically, if you took every song that's ever been recorded in the world, I've run the math on this with things, and you use some of the newer compression technologies, you can put all of it on a single SD card. It's actually somewhat shocking, essentially, how much some of the newer AI compression techniques can take advantage of. And over the next few years with stuff, that's going to be something that's going to be, the cost point of that's going to drop even more. The cost to distribute that to every single household in the USA, as an example, I mean, you can do this for under a few $1 million with stuff. Like, that's going to be in the near future. At that point, I mean, I'd argue we already crossed this point, but let's just say for everything, not just like the best or whatever. At that point, cost of the distribution is not that it drops to low or it drops to zero, but it is zero. We're going to be at that point very, very soon. And at that point, it's more of a social structural arrangement than anything that has to do with essentially technical considerations. And I'm kind of concerned that sometimes when we basically ground these discussions in tech, we're not basically properly accounting for the social structures involved, which, again, we made it up, and we can do it differently. But when we say that something can't be different, it's shutting off some options. So just throwing it out there.
Spotify would argue that they're...
Sorry, brother, I didn't hear much of what
that's
you
all right.
Hey, Tyler,
That's...
I invited my friend Kathy in here if you have questions about like the distribution and the breakdown. Okay. She actually was explaining it to me, too.
I was just going to address Chris's point, which Spotify would argue their main value isn't that they provide you the music, it's that they provide you the algorithm that suggests out of that entire catalog of all music of all time, that's the one song that you are most likely to enjoy at that time. That's of more value than actually getting the song to you, because as you're exactly right, like the issue of the physicality of the digital distribution isn't so much the issue anymore. It's about doing the curation, essentially, is the true value of it. The other point that you made about should artists potentially get a cut of Spotify as well as the labels did, because the labels are lots of big artists that have very valuable catalogs, and then in exchange for those rights, they get a piece of Spotify. One artist also could do that if they were a large artist, and very notably, small artists are very happy to put their music on Spotify for the hopes of getting visibility, and that's generally how it starts when the artist isn't Spotify's providing more value to that unknown artist at that moment than
they lack negotiation power.
But as the artist gets bigger, as the rights owner, they can and do get into a position that Metallica and the Beatles got into, where Spotify notably didn't have the Beatles or Metallica, and they wanted them because Metallica is one of the very few bands in the entire music game that actually understands these issues. And so Metallica does own all of their shit. actually. They're one of the very few artists that do. And so they said, no, we know how this is going to play out. You're going to grow and grow and grow and grow, and people are going to be wanting our music, our music, our music. The Beatles and Metallica were like, go ahead, grow, 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 and then you're going to start begging for our music. And how much are you offering this year? Let's see how much you offer next year. How much this year? Let's give it another year or two. And then eventually Metallica and Beatles did join Spotify, and I would be surprised if they didn't get a cut of Spotify.
And for example, Taylor Swift re-recorded a couple, maybe one or two of her albums so that she could own her own rights because of that whole fiasco.
That's one of the wildest label, right? Music biz stories of all time is the Taylor Swift Scooter Braun story. Anyway, we don't even have that requires its own deep dive room. So the President Trump now has the headlines are now past tense. Donald Trump is suing Facebook, Twitter, Google to restore social media accounts. And the former president remains suspended from the most social media platforms following the June 6th riots, but he's leading a class action lawsuit. And we'll see how that plays out. And hopefully, Tina.
There are 3 separate lawsuits, just so that you know. And I found this kind of funny because the third one is YouTube and Sundar Pichai.
Oh, yeah.
CEO
of Google, right.
So I don't think he's even aware that Sundar isn't the CEO of YouTube.
But I don't know that it matters. It depends on the company structure. Alphabet, the parent company, wholly owns YouTube.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah, but still,
it might be for optics and PR, or who knows.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just throwing it out there, if we had a civic alternative to essentially these messaging services, you could move all the shit into one corner and then you can deal with it separately. Right now, essentially, whether or not Trump argues this way or the other, it's going to basically affect all the other private communications because it's saying, well, if a politician can do this, what in our country, what about another country? And then everyone starts, bickering with each other. If you literally just had, here's a civic communications platform that's a decent quality and competence. I mean, it's been 15 years. It can't be that fucking hard to clone. That would basically solve a lot of these issues. But because we're throwing everything together into one soup, we're going to have, no one's going to be happy at the end result with stuff. Some people are going to be happy at one part, other people won't be happy on others. It would be a lot cleaner if we had some clear delineations.
Okay, so we got 4 minutes before we got to pause here, and I've got literally 20 headlines to blast through. Let me try this. Here we go. Germany charges man with spying for China is the headline from DW. The political scientist was recruited by Chinese intelligence while on a lecture to Shanghai in 2010, authorities say. So I just tweeted that out. And thank you to Nalormi for tweeting that in. Dan just sent in an article. Good news, oil companies. Fox News is launching a weather channel. Fox Weather will reportedly be launching later this year. And TikTok...
They're going to have custom Sharpies on their maps.
TikTok tried to secretly track iPhone users, but Apple blocked the sneaky attempt. Thank you, Radeja, for this one. Just tweeting that out at TNATW. You can see our Twitter account on my photo here in Clubhouse, and go to the Twitter account for all these fantastic articles that people tweeted in. These are the best of the articles today. TikTok tried to work around Apple's app transparency feature to track iPhone users, but Apple called the company's bluff. And by the way, BGR, Boy Genius Report, you missed the fact that TikTok was not the only Chinese company that did this. Several of the other big Chinese companies did it all in collaboration with TikTok, and they all got caught. So try harder next time, Boy Genius Report. So Willie sent in this article about a self-driving bike, and then as a comment, and I got it. This looks fantastic. It's a BMW fully electric scooter motorbike, and it looks like it's right out of Blade Runner. This thing, that's wild looking. That is quite a machine, and it's got a video, so you can watch it zooming around what appears to be some part of Germany. I can't quite tell which city that is, but some German in the audience, no doubt, will be able to tell. And then we've got the next headline, which is, here it is. This live streaming farmers earning millions from their pomegranate sales on China's TikTok, which we covered earlier today. And thank you to Sanjeev Nair in the audience who tweeted this in. And you have to see this photo. This photo tells you everything about the future of e-commerce. Better than any photo I could ever imagine of this farmer in his field of pomegranates. The field looks like lettuce, but he's got a bowl of what appears to be pomegranates, and he's sitting on a wood crate on the middle of his farm with his iPhone taped to stick stuck in the dirt ground as a makeshift camera stand. And he's live streaming and he's selling his produce, and that's the future right there. Great photo. And Faraz sent in one that the Emiratis entrepreneurs launched the first wildlife satellite in the UAE. Galib satellite allows researchers to track wildlife and bird migration in the remote areas of the UAE and assist in monitoring animals and conservation. That is super cool. And then Uncanny Valley Memu is an AI-driven engine that creates new music around the clock, algorithmically, from an AI. It's happening. OpenAI does it as well from their SoundCloud account. And by the way, it's getting better all the time. It's getting to the point where Nirvana fans can't even tell that it's not an actual real Nirvana song. It's an AI who made the song. And that's how you know you're fucked, everybody. As a musician, the AIs are going to be writing songs better than Cal or Cheryl or Ellen or Chris or probably everybody in Clubhouse with very few exceptions. And that's by 2 years from now, it'll even write songs as good as Paul McCartney. And in 10 years from now...
Let's be honest. The AI will be better at being you than you are.
Yeah. Cheryl and others sent in an article of a really mind-blowing advert of a giant 3D cat that's taken over Tokyo's biggest billboard. Cheryl, where in Tokyo is this billboard? The hyper-realistic cat looms playfully over Tokyo's busiest railway stations. Well, that would mean Shinjuku. Is it in Shinjuku?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's wild. You have to see this ad that they made. It looks like an actual Godzilla-sized cat is hanging off of this building in Tokyo. It's really, you have to see it. It's kind of mind-blowing. Autonomous weapons already exist and are playing a role on battlefields like Libya and Armenia. The Washington Post, the Pentagon says a ban on autonomous weapons isn't necessary, but experts say the weapons that can make decisions for themselves are already here. We've been talking about the drones, but apparently there's others. Let's save that one for tomorrow. Visa, as we said, Visa Canada installment option does buy now, pay later. We covered that. Thank you. Analysis of the U.S. IPO market the U.S. IPO market a danger zone for Chinese firms after Beijing crackdown. Indeed. Well said. From Reuters, China's step-up security of overseas listings by its companies and a clampdown on ride-hailing giant Didi soon after its debut in New York have darkened the outlook for listings in the U.S., bankers and investors said. And that's right. It's the end of Chinese tech companies, or maybe Chinese companies generally, listing in New York. And the U.S. President Joe Biden...
2 seconds.
1 second. Yeah, hold on 1 second. U.S. President Joe Biden to direct doing an executive order to draft a right to repair rules, which will include tractors and smartphones, as many, many, many farmers and many, many smartphone owners have been waiting for. Was that Johan?
Yes, it was. And the thing is that one of the things here with the Visa and Canada, you know that Klarna is already available on that market.
Yeah.
That might take a hit of that one.
Yeah. It's an interesting development. In fact, the headline said that Canada's already doing $1.7 trillion of buy now, pay later per year. That seems incredibly high. I couldn't believe it. And it's growing 30% per year, the article said, interestingly. That part didn't surprise me. But El Salvador considers mining Bitcoin using energy from a volcano. El Salvador continues to shake up the cryptocurrency world. The small Latin American state is thinking of creating its own mining plant with the help of a volcano. And drone policy set to be relaxed as IAF goes for counter-rogue tech. The new rules are likely to be unveiled on Independence Day, which makes me think this is an older article. But I will retweet it nonetheless, and you can dive into that yourself. And Chinese scientists say they now have the world's most powerful quantum computer, and that the quantum computer solved a problem in just 70 minutes that the most powerful supercomputer would have needed at least 8 years to solve. And essentially the big takeaway from this article, which we shared in our other meeting earlier today, 7 hours ago, click on the title of the room to see our schedule where we meet twice a day, is that they basically proved that adding more qubits, or what are called quantum bits, to the quantum computer does make it go faster. And that this computer with more quantum bits goes faster than Google's quantum computer, which only has 66 quantum bits. This one has 76, and it measured to go faster. So the race is on to add more qubits to quantum computers. and caused a singularity. So the next web says this startup is using big data to find the next superstar. So this is the flip side of, instead of AIs actually writing and composing and producing the songs, this AI is being used to find humans that have the next songs. And what happens if you combine both of those together? You have an AI that can find the hit song, testing the songs being written by AIs, and then you get really good songs from AIs being,
and then copy them.
Right. Well, not even copy them, but they can learn from each other. It's just like a video game. It's coming. There's no avoiding it. And that's it. We got to pause because now we have something truly special, and we're 4 minutes over. So the Clean Tech News. Now this is the second week, and Chris, I really hope you join us there because you are a fountain of wealth on this topic. With our friends from We Don't Have Time, all about clean tech and how we can unfuck the planet as efficiently as possible. So please join us over at the Clean Tech News. We Don't Have Time under Tech News. Click on the title of this room, follow Tech News. We'll see you over there. And thank you to everybody for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Alrighty.